Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Life Show, instant Week 9 recap edition. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz. It is a great day to be great. It's a great day to break down all of the utilization, all the fantasy ramifications, all of the data, and some good film stuff as well from an ever eventful Week 9. A really eventful Week 9, actually. Points were flying. It really was a great Sunday of football. Of course, as always, I'm joined by the one, the only Fantasy Life Director of Analytics, Dwain, the Rock McFarland. And yeah, Dwain, the football is footballing today. Love it.
Yeah, the football was definitely footballing today. A lot of close games, a lot of fantasy points scored. I was kind of looking at the early slate, and I was like, man, there's not really anybody breaking the slate. Drake London catches 3 touchdowns. CMC goes absolutely bonkers. So, yeah, looking forward to hanging out and bringing it all down.
Obviously starting a little bit early because the Seahawks decided to absolutely blow the brains out of the Commanders there on Sunday Night Football. So barring a massive comeback there, we'll get to that at the end of the show. But as always here on the Fantasy Life Show, we're going to rewind things all the way back to Thursday and break down the Ravens beating down the Dolphins 28-6. Baltimore covered with ease as 7.5-point faves. Under did cash here at 51.5. This one was actually already 28-6 with about 5 minutes remaining in the third quarter. So a bit of a quiet fourth quarter, but that was still more than enough time for Lamar Jackson and company to largely get their fantasy points done. And Lamar's return to action, 4 touchdowns through the air, only took off to run 5 times. I think a couple of those might have even been kneels. And it's just amazing, Dwayne, to see Lamar not even need the best club in his bag, which is obviously being maybe the best rushing quarterback we've ever seen, still give us 25 fantasy points. Pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, look, his first game back, clearly, not quite the same as a rusher in this game, but yeah, throwing the 4 passing touchdowns absolutely did it for him. So yeah, I mean, Ravens took care of business. They moved to 3-5, and like if you look at the rest of their division, like they're still alive, man. And if you look at their schedule, like coming up, like the Ravens are very alive.
I think after this game, they were literally favored to win the AFC North. So again, a little bit different from the betting odds in terms of what is going down with, a 3-5 team. Obviously, some stuff could have changed Sunday as well, but obviously a good first step in the right direction. Now 2-0 since returning from their bye. Those 4 touchdowns, 3 of them went to tight ends. Ravens didn't get a chance to play during National Tight Ends Week, so it's only right that they saved some of those scores. 2 for Mark Andrews, 1 for Charlie Kohler. We also saw Rashad Bateman find the end zone. So a bit of a, you could say disappointing game for, Zay Flowers. But man, 5 catches, 64 yards. It's kind of like what we talked about, Dwayne, where we actually do have a bit of a newfound floor for Zay. We all want the booms, and I still do think they could be coming.
Yeah, I mean, he still had the 22% target share. These sort of things happen. And what was the most interesting thing to me about the Ravens this weekend, Ian, from a utilization standpoint, they only used 3 wide receivers. Like they only played 3 guys. They didn't play any of the others. So they were using these heavy sets. They were using their fullback. They were using the 3 tight ends. And so that's really interesting because Isaiah Likely ended up scoring 9 fantasy points in this game. He only had a 48% route participation. But if you go back to last year, you remember those games when Zay Flowers was out and they had to kind of shorten their rotation with their wide receivers and they were playing more of their tight ends. That's actually whenever Likely really started to play well down the stretch last year. So just something to kind of keep an eye on, guys. Likely is not somebody we're rushing to put into our fantasy lineup starting next week, but we could see a shift from the Ravens here and how they really want to attack other teams. I mean, this is the first game we've seen of them coming out of the bye. So I think when we look at the Ravens, maybe we'll see more of the multiple tight end stuff.
And he is maybe the only backup tight end in the league where we can confidently say, God forbid something ever happened to Mark Andrews. We're talking instant top 5 tight end the rest of the way. So Derrick Henry, 119 yards rushing, unfortunately got tackled at the 1-yard line and did not score on the drive that resulted in Andrews' touchdown. But bigger and better days will be ahead for the big dog, I'm sure. Maybe as early as next week, Ravens are traveling to Minnesota to take on a Vikings defense that, again, tends to be much better against the pass than the run. Over with the Dolphins, Dwayne, just 2 for 12 on third downs. Really couldn't consistently establish anything on offense. But hey, at least when you got Devon Achane doing his thing, you can't be too mad in Fantasyland. Round up, racking up over 100 total yards. Had 8 missed tackles forced on the evening. That was tied for the second most of the week. Should have had an even bigger day. He made a diving catch down the field that they just kind of reviewed and said, yeah, it wasn't a catch. I don't know, Dwayne. I like to think I've watched a good amount of football over the years, and this sure did look like a catch to me. So in my opinion, Achane and Dez caught it, but whatever. He's still doing his thing. Jalen Waddle also had a good game again, 82 yards, and should have had another 36-yard catch to his name. But another atrocious referee call, this one especially, happened when they actually penalized Ollie Gordon on a phantom tripping penalty. Even his own coach was, for some reason, mad at him. So I don't know what was going on there, Dwayne. But Achane, Waddle, look, we still know these guys are going to be ballers. And arguably, they are just diamonds in, what is otherwise a dumpster fire in Miami. So you got any big utilization takeaways here? The only big kind of question I had was anything for Greg Dulcich?
No, 47% route participation. He scored 9.9 fantasy points, but it was still a rotation. So I don't think there's much to talk. I think you nailed it. Like Miami is Achane, Waddle, or bust. Like we're not messing with anything else there.
And it sounds like it's going to be that way because while the Dolphins did fire their GM, Chris Greer, it sounds like Mike McDaniel's going to be here for at least the rest of the season. And that would also lead us to believe that Tua is going to be under center. So again, maybe not what the Miami Dolphins fans want to hear. I am very afraid to see how this game goes against the Bills next week. But at the same time, Achane, Waddle, as long as he's on the Dolphins, which judging on some of the reporting from the insiders, if you will, sounds like he'll be there.
Let Zach Wilson start one game, and all the Miami fans will change their mind. They will be begging for Tua back under center. It would not last long.
Can you imagine, like, Dwayne, I saw someone float out, what if the Raiders traded for Tua? I don't think there'd be a single fan base in the league that would be even remotely excited about Tua becoming their quarterback.
No, we've seen Tua be a good facilitator of an offense. Like, we know he can do it. If you put him in the right offense with the right weapons, I still think he can do it. This just, the Dolphins have lost their mojo, man. Like whatever it was they were doing 2 and 3 years ago, defenses have just caught up to all the motioning and all that kind of stuff that you should just create these like jailbreak scenarios. You just don't get them anymore.
Keep an eye on Ollie Gordon injury. Again, the Dolphins are going to be facing the Bills, and then they actually have a bye coming up a little bit after that in week 12, but otherwise should be good to go there. Moving on to Sunday action, guys. It's time for our Xfinity game of the week coming at you quick this time, brought to you by Xfinity. Imagine all your football all in one place. Easy, Xfinity. Imagine that. The Bears took down the Cincinnati Bengals 47-42. Chicago won and covered as 3-point faves. The overcash share of 51.5. Dwayne, 1,071 combined total yards in this one. That is the highest in a game this season. The only game even over 1,000 combined yards. So the Bengals trailed by 2 touchdowns with under 2 minutes left. Scored, got the onside kick, scored again, and with the 2-point conversion took the lead, only for the Bears to go 72 yards in 37 seconds to win it with a long 58-yard touchdown from Caleb Williams to Colston Loveland. So, on the one hand, we look at Caleb Williams and Colston Loveland having to break out. Kyle Monungai ran for 176 yards. And it's great to see, Dwayne. What can you do when you're the Bears other than beat the team in front of you? On the other hand, it's like we know who the other team in front of them was. And it's one of the 2 worst defenses in the league. So overall thoughts on the Bears doing what they were supposed to do, but also keeping in mind that, they were playing the Bengals.
Yeah, the Bengals are a big boost, obviously, but Caleb's been a good fantasy quarterback other than the last 2 games, so for most of the season, he's been fine. He's averaging 19.4 fantasy points per game. He gave you the 280 passing yards today with 3 passing touchdowns. He also has 2 catches for 22 yards and a receiving touchdown. So obviously those are points you aren't going to get normally every single week, but Caleb, running around, doing his thing on the ground as well, five attempts today for 53 yards. So he's just one of these guys that he's not like an elite dual threat, but we know he can give us 25 to 30. Well, like today he gave us 50, but 25 to 35 yards rushing per game. And he always has a chance to score a rushing touchdown. And he always has a chance to throw for 2 passing touchdowns. So, he got moved outside of my top 12 for the rest of season projections last week. I don't see that changing, to your point, just with the Bengals. I think he's still more of a borderline QB1, but it is a reminder of the kind of ceiling game that you can get. And like I said, he's averaging 19.4 fantasy points per game. So those of you that drafted him, you've still been pretty happy with what you've gotten from Caleb for where he went. Real quick on Loveland, I think this is the biggest note. 29.8 fantasy points today, 75% route participation, 21% target share. But I went back and looked, Ian, before Cole Kmet suffered the concussion, which was on the 4th drive. Loveland had 69% of the snaps and a 64% route participation. So it wasn't at the 75. It was still lower, but Cole Kmet was at 21%. So Loveland was the tight end 1 already. Now, guys, unless your name is Dalton Kincaid, if you're going to be under a 70% route participation, it can be really problematic. But Loveland looked really good today. Obviously he's not going to have that kind of long play at the end of the game where he just bounces off the tacklers, but still, 21% target share today, definitely his best game. So I think this is still a step in the right direction for Colston Loveland. And as the season goes on, like maybe they just decide to let their first round pick play, Ian.
Hey, it's a step in the right direction. I didn't think it was going to take us 8 long, cold weeks to get that first step, Dwayne, but it is a step nonetheless, and it was good to see Loveland make those plays. So, again, bad tackling can be another man's great tackle breaking, so not trying to take anything away from him. Did have a nice 5-yard touchdown, a slant where he managed to, beat his guy off the line of scrimmage and all of that. So, hopefully, Caleb Williams just leaves some receptions for Loveland and everyone else, Dwayne. Lest we forget, he caught a touchdown from DJ Moore, even had another one on a trick play. Just, again, Ben Johnson doing some cool Ben Johnson things, so good to see that. Unfortunately, while DJ Moore did have the passing touchdown, he also ran for a touchdown. Nothing going for Rome Odunze, Dwayne. Really was a situation where, we can give the Bengals and DJ Turner and some of those cornerbacks credit, but just going 60 minutes and your team scoring 47 points and we can't get one catch for Rome Odunze? I mean, is this warrant dropping him in the ranks for you, Dwayne?
Not really. This categorize this under shit happens. Like, this is just the way this game is, man. I will say this, like, since the bye, and we've talked about it multiple times, like the Bears have just been much more, willing to, run the ball, be more balanced, things like that. That worries me more than just a game like this. I mean, he still had 100% route participation. So like he's out there, he's playing, he had a 9% target share today. He did have a ball in the end zone, hit his hands. It was behind him from Caleb. So you could put part of the blame on Caleb for not leading him, but Odunze had his hands on it. So, I mean, he could have caught that touchdown and at least, saved your fantasy day a little bit. So he was very close to, having more like 8 or 9 fantasy points here. But yeah, I really wouldn't overreact. Olamide Zaccheaus, with Luther Burden out, like he saw a larger role in this game. He had a 24% target share on a 68% route participation. So we'll wait and see what happens with Burden dealing with a concussion. But Zaccheaus just a fly in the ointment, man. This dude does not go away. Like when you look at his stats every week.
He had a great game.
Yeah, he had a great game. I get it. He had a great game, but you're asking me how this happens to Odunze and all these other guys. This is how. They have a third guy that sometimes mixes in Zaccheaus.
I just crack up that Zaccheaus has a very good game. 6 catches, 58 yards, and a touchdown. Absolute crickets from everyone. If Luther Burden had 15 yards and a touchdown, everyone would be losing their freaking
This is your
minds.
new bit.
But
it's hilarious.
Hey, it's not a bit. It's just kind of what happens. It's what happens in our society, Dwayne. Year 2025. Kyle Monangai, $176 on the ground, another 22 receiving yards. Britton Brown, 37 yards and a touchdown was done right. Obviously, no DeAndre Swift in this one. So we already saw Monangai's role creeping up, and hey, I don't expect him to go back down after Swift is back in the lineup. No, I don't think a takeover is going to happen. DeAndre Swift was playing some pretty darn good ball himself since the bye. But man, if anything, like 1A, 1B going on here for a Bears team that you mentioned it is learning how to run the football pretty darn well.
Yeah, I mean, and we've talked about it in the past weeks. Like DeAndre Swift was going to get a downgrade in the or was going to get a sell high on him in the utilization report last week, but we had these 2 really good matchups going. Of course, when I wrote that, it was before the injury cropped up, and we ended up not having DeAndre Swift for this game. So I think Monangai's performance today, to your point, just kind of cements the fact that it's a closer split between these two. It's been that way since the bye. This might tighten it up a little bit more. I mean, this could make it like more of a 1A, 1B. It was still a little bit larger lead than that for DeAndre Swift, but Monangai played really well today. So I don't see a world where his role gets, where his role decreases. We'll see if it increases, but played really good.
It is hilarious. Now, 198 total yards and 0 touchdowns from Monangai today. Jaylen Warren had 158 yards total against this defense. Breece Hall had a $151 and 3 touchdowns. Josh Jacobs, 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. I kid you not, guys. There's like another 10 running backs I could name who just had fantastic games against this Bengals defense. You could even tell it was getting to the Bengals offensive players as they were walking to their tunnel. So 4th most rushing yards in a single game this season by Mr. Monangai. Heck of a performance from the rookie and someone who, again, is already going to be earning even more flex benefit of the doubt, even if and when Swift is back in the picture. Think that about does it here for the Bears. Again, keep an eye on Cole Kmet and that return from the concussion, because if we do see Loveland with a full-fledged every down role, certainly going to be tough to keep him out of that tight end 1 conversation. So going to be the Bears versus the Giants next week, perhaps another opportunity for them to boom. With the Bengals, Dwayne, again, second straight game scoring 38 plus points. They lost them both. They're the first team to have that happen since the 1960s. So they are going to have a bye to get healthy, which is honestly pretty great news because apparently, according to Zach Taylor, Joe Flacco could barely lift his arm this week during practice, but he could lift it enough on Sunday to throw for 470 yards and 4 touchdowns. Just unbelievable what this guy was doing, Dwayne. Again, I think we expected him, and I'm sure plenty of other people did, to play better than he did with the Browns because he honestly was working as one of the worst quarterbacks in the league. I didn't think we were going to get this, man. He's leading a top 5 offense right now. And I know the bad defense helps, but good God, man, this old man is balling.
Yeah, 30.7 fantasy points today for Joe Flacco. In his 4 games with Cincinnati, he's averaging 24.9 fantasy points per game, 314 passing yards, 2.8 touchdowns per game, and 0.5 interceptions. So, yeah, absolutely balling. You know, we've talked about it a little bit. Really, over the last 3 years, Joe Flacco has been a baller, except for the first 4 games with the Browns this year. So I don't think this is going away. And now he gets a bye week to get healthy, which probably comes at a good time. So yeah, Joe Flacco, low end QB1, like pass first offense, great weapons. Like he's right there with Stafford and those guys, Ian.
It's a situation where we've honestly seen them. Obviously, Bears defense is not that good, but even a couple of weeks ago against the Packers and some of these other squads, man, they've been able to keep up. Obviously, a lot of that has to do with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. Another 100-plus yard ever for Chase. Massive performance from T. Higgins, 121 yards and a pair of touchdowns, one of which was a 44-yard one down the sideline. That honestly should be on the short list of catches of the year. Moss this dude. It was just completely incredible. So he did get banged up late. Didn't exactly see him return, but again, with the bye and haven't really heard anything from the national media, wouldn't suspect that's going to keep him out of the picture for too long. But yeah, Jamar Chase, the wide receiver 1 in fantasy, unless you prefer Puka or JSN, all power to you. If so, T. Higgins rapidly rising up the upside wide receiver 2 conversation. Chase Brown, though, Dwayne, someone who went out there and really played almost every single snap, something that's firmly on the table if this Samaje Perine ankle injury winds up being anything serious.
Yeah, and just real quick on Higgins, games with Flacco, 19.3 fantasy points per game. Games without Flacco, 8.2. So we can't overstate how much of a difference Joe Flacco has made for T. Higgins. To your point, rapidly rising up the ranks. And yeah, with Chase Brown today, we had Perine get hurt on the very first drive. We kind of saw like the version of Chase Brown we got last year, Ian, that helped people win those fantasy championships. 95% of the snaps, 79% of the rushing attempts, 75% route participation, 88% route participation, 75% of the snaps inside the 5. Like he had everything. He had a 31% target share, scored 19.2 fantasy points per game. Taj Brooks is the running back 2 behind him, but he only played 5% of the snaps and 7% of the rushing attempts for Brooks. So we'll see what happened with Perine. It was an ankle. But man, if after the bye we don't have Perine for some period of time, Chase Brown, we had already moved Chase Brown up a little bit, but was really splitting this backfield like 55-45 with Perine. If Perine's out, man, and he's going to be in this 70% plus role, yeah, I mean, he's going to be a running back 1.
Bengals are going to have their Week 10 bye. After that, Steelers, Patriots, Ravens, Bills, Ravens, Dolphins, Cardinals through Week 17. That's a mixed, Dwayne, of offenses that are either going to score 40-plus points against the Bengals. Let's be honest, probably anyone can score 40-plus points against the Bengals, or really bad defenses. Wheels up for Flacco and the whole gang here moving along. So again, guys, this has been our Xfinity Game of the Week brought to you by Xfinity. Imagine all your football all in one place. Easy, Xfinity. Imagine that. Moving on to a game that wasn't quite as cool as Bears-Bengals, but still pretty great. The Vikings took down the Lions 27-24, winning outright as 9.5-point dogs. The overcash here at 47.5. J.J. McCarthy, the numbers don't look amazing. You know, only 5.7 yards per attempt, $143 through the air, took 5 sacks as well. But just really, man, made a lot of high-level throws, particularly early on, which helped the Vikings get out to a quick and early lead. Also ran in for a touchdown, Dwayne, cementing another W for the sicko quarterback start. So good job by you. And again, just good job by McCarthy, showing that he belongs, and sure, still has a long way to come. But you would just think, you know, after the 6 weeks he had off, that he was going to be the worst quarterback alive, not someone who, yeah, managed to take down the Lions here, you know, in Detroit.
Yeah, I mean, I thought he was good in fantasy. He gave us the 18.9 fantasy points. You talked about what he did on the ground, 9 carries, 12 yards, rushing touchdown, threw 2 touchdown passes. Did look better early in the game, looked progressively worse as the game went on. Only threw for 143 yards. Some of that's due to game script, but we've got 3 games now with him as the starter, and they've averaged 148 passing yards per game. So, I mean, this is not good for Justin Jefferson. This is not good for Jordan Addison. You guys don't care about TJ Hawkinson because he hasn't been worth anything since we drafted him. So, this is a downgrade because we were kind of hoping, hey, can he come out and throw for like 200, 225 per game? Like maybe he won't be like 260, but this is not good for all the pass catchers. Jefferson came through with 16.7 fantasy points today. 39% target share, but only 57 air yards. He had a 6.3 average depth of target in this one. Now, Addison was the guy working down the field. Addison had a 25.5 average depth of target today. But we had already downgraded them a little bit, but I'm probably going to downgrade all of those guys. Again, as far as McCarthy goes, like what you're hoping, you're happy with the performance because you could still have a Jackson Dart. Like that's the potential here. You have a guy that could run for, 30, 35 yards per game, throw for hopefully 200 instead of 150, Ian. And then if he gets this couple of touchdown passes, you score some fantasy points.
I don't know, man. I feel like I'm more encouraged about the Vikings after this. They ran out to a lead. He only threw the ball 25 times. I get it. I mean, the efficiency wasn't incredible, but really, like you're looking at Justin Jefferson worse after this game than you were before?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I just saw the game very differently than you. I didn't think McCarthy looked good at all in the second half. I know they got out to a lead, but like what we're looking for is the efficiency in the passing game. Like if you're gonna run this offense right, that's not gonna throw the ball as much. Like it needs to be. I'm not saying he's got to be Sam Darnold, like for whatever Darnold was tonight. 15 yards per probably attempt or some shit like that. But like with McCarthy, 5.7 is not good. So I'll go back and watch him again. I wasn't very impressed. I thought he was fine for fantasy, but not good for real life.
Again, I mean, they just had the positive game script. He only threw the ball 9 times the second half. Had a nice drop in the bucket to Addison early. He couldn't hold on, then wound up actually finding Hawkinson, one of his rare bright spots of the year. So we'll see what happened. Maybe I've been texting Thor a little bit too much on the side. But hey, a win is a win is a win. Good for McCarthy here, getting one there. In the backfield, though, we did have some unfortunate injury news, Dwain. Aaron Jones came out, really did look great, looked explosive, was catching the football, and honestly seemed like it was more of a clear-cut RB1 situation with Mason being more of the clear cut too. Unfortunately, Jones did suffer a sprained AC joint. The belief is minor, and Jones says he'll believes he'll be able to play next week. I couldn't find the exact quote, Dwain, but I'm pretty sure that's almost exactly what the report and what Jones was saying after he had the hamstring injury in week 2 that wound up getting him on IR. So again, we will see what happens, but would love to see this in fact be a minor injury because Jones looked great out there. Was he in fact dominating the usage as much as it seemed like, Dwain?
Yeah, before he got hurt, which was on the 7th drive when he injured his shoulder, 77% of the snaps, 70% of the rushing attempts, 68% route participation, and a 13% target share. So yeah, he had just completely ripped the starting job away from Jordan Mason. And so the thing is, though, now, Ian, even if he's healthy, or healthy enough to play the next game, we don't like running backs dealing with shoulder injuries. I mean, your shoulder's going to get hit, like period. There's no way around it. It's going to get hit. It's going to get driven into the ground when you get tackled. And the shoulder stuff has been a historical issue for Aaron Jones. So even if he thinks he's healthy, like I get worried that the Vikings are going to be like, well, we tried to load him up and look what happened. I will say Jordan Mason just hasn't been good like over the last 3 weeks. So that might be enough to make them just want to keep using Aaron Jones. But yeah, it's unfortunate because he was really taking it over. And that was going to give us potentially a scenario where it was just like, okay, we do have one of these guys that we know that we can really use. Because unless McCarthy starts playing better, like it's not a backfield where we want to be dealing with a split. It puts them down like in that below Seattle territory. At least Seattle, we really like the offense.
I'm hopeful that we get a little bit of schedule relief here for those guys. I mean, Browns, Eagles, Chargers, Lions, those are 4 pretty straight, tough front 7 run defending defenses. Ravens and the Bears are up next. One of the things I'll be highlighting in my week 10 rankings column is running backs with their best strength of schedule here moving forward. So make sure you guys keep out an eye for that. But yes, again, Vikings got that dub. We'll be facing off against the Ravens next. Over with the Lions, Dwain, sure seemed like business as usual. Again, Goff took 5 sacks. The offense couldn't run the ball, which was rare to see because usually they are quite good at that against pretty much everyone. But Amon-Ra St. Brown, 97 yards on 9 catches. Jameson Williams had a sweet 30-yard touchdown, somehow managed to stay in bounds. Was good to see him come back from that week 7 goose egg. And Sam Laporta, man, 97 yards and a touchdown. That is up there on the short list of best tight end touchdowns of the year. 40 yards on fourth down, broke a tackle, and then was starting to push his way in the end zone. Then got that teammate help, found his way in there. So honestly, my only just concern here would be keep an eye on the injury report, because their guard, Christian Mahoney, had a knee injury. He got carted off. And then also Taylor Decker had a knee injury and popped up as well. So we'll just say, again, as we kind of talk about, Dwain, it's clusters with, offensive line, defensive injuries to pay attention to. This Detroit Lions team might not be the same sort of juggernaut if that amazing offensive line is going to be, really banged up.
Yeah, I agree. That's really the only takeaway we need to worry about here. Let's keep an eye on the offensive line. It was business as usual as far as like the utilization for all of these guys. So yeah, we can move on.
And with that, let's move on to the Panthers taking down the Packers. Do you hear me, guys? The Panthers beat the Packers as 13-point dogs. What a performance by Bryce Young, Eric Eager, and everyone involved in the Panthers organization. The under did cash here of 43.5. Game-winning 49-yard field goal as time expired. How about them apples? Just one play after another, Dwain. Just when you thought Bryce Young couldn't pull out another rabbit out of his hat, he did it. Just deep downfield dimes. One incredible. I'm playing with you guys. 5.1 yards per attempt. He had an atrocious end zone interception. It was the Rico Dowdle show through and through, man. Best player on this offense, really has been all season long. $130 on the ground, 2 touchdowns. There were 2 separate times, Dwain, where I thought he was injured and honestly was going to have to deal with something. And then kind of as I was starting to check social media to see what was going on, he was back out there. So even despite missing a few plays, sure seemed like he just absolutely dominated snap count over Chuba Hubbard. And just let me, say it for all the fantasy managers out there. Good.
Yeah, it is good. 28.1 fantasy points today, 74% of the snaps. He did leave the game for a little bit, and someone had mentioned a groin, so I never heard anything else about it. So we'll keep an eye on the injury report, but he did dominate today. 81% of the rushing attempts, 100% of the work inside the 5-yard line, 48% route participation. So that was where Chuba Hubbard got a little bit of work, but they honestly didn't run their backs out of the backfield a lot today. I guess they were keeping them into block with Micah Parsons and some of the rabid Packers trying to hunt Mr. Bryce Young down. But Dowdle, man, in his 5 games as a starter, 31.5 fantasy points per game. He scored 30.9 in week 5, 33.9 in week 6, and then 28.1 today. And honestly, like Chuba Hubbard, droppable, Ian, 1.7 fantasy points today, 20% of the snaps. He's handcuffed. That's all he is.
I dropped him in like my 8-team league last week, and I had to think about it. I was like, you know what? It's 8-team, whatever. I saw him on the waiver wire in one of my 12-team leagues with a bunch of other, fantasy people, Dwain. So I'm with you. He's a handcuff, and, he'd be a good handcuff and everything, but he hasn't looked that good this year. Like, I don't know, all else equal. Blake Corum, Tyler Algier. I think I'd be ranking those guys higher if we just removed the RB1 from every single equation. But Chuba's still a good handcuff in his own right. But man,
he's a good handcuff.
Tough decisions. I don't think he needs to be a must stay on the roster. So great news on Rico. And I'm inclined to believe this is going to stick here, Dwain. So in his full 3 games as a starter now, $141, 239, 234, and then 130. So again, just absolutely balling out. Those are total yards, but absolutely crushing it, man. Honestly, when we get to the ranks next week, Panthers against the Saints at home, that's one of the rare games we can see positive game script here. For a team that's 5-4, Rico Dowdle likely, Dwain, will be in my top 12.
Oh, Rico Dowdle's going to be in your top 6.
Ooh.
He's going to be in your top 6, man. There's no, we just talked about these fantasy points, man. The dude is like he's on a massive heater. Like, there's no way we won't have him in our top 6. I haven't looked at the whole schedule and everything. You're right. He's for sure a top 12, but my gut says he'll be in our top 6. I think this is here to stay as well. I mean, they came out and said it basically. They're like, hey, look, we know we've got to reevaluate and we're going to make a change. Then we got the report like Friday or Saturday that they were going to hand it over to Rico Dowdle. Then we saw them come through with it today. So unless there's an injury that we see pop up with him, like on the injury report this week, yeah, man, it'll be really hard not to have him in the top 6.
Top 12, more likely top 6 either way. RB1 on those fantasy squads.
I figured you'd say top 3.
The RB1 the rest of the way. Rico Dowdle heard it here first. Only mistake he made, I don't even think it was a mistake, but he did the 2 pumps after a touchdown. He got a flag. I thought this was America, and you got to do 3 pumps, Dwain, to get a flag. I guess not for Rico. So unfortunate.
And look, just real quick, like we have to give him credit, man, because to your point, like Bryce Young's been terrible. Yeah. He's just doing that. Like, they have a good offensive line, but they were dealing with some injuries today. Rico Dowdle, this teams know that like he's their dude, and he's still just. You think the Packers didn't know that like Rico Dowdle's the man they got to stop? They knew that. and he still did what he did today. It's really amazing. It's amazing in an offense that has so many warts on it that Dowdle can do this.
Bryce Young has one game where he's averaged more than 6.6 yards per attempt. And guess who it was against? The Cowboys, which only averaging 8 yards per attempt against the Cowboys.
With this run game, he can't do that. That's just it's hilarious. All right.
So again, Xavier Legette on end zone target, go off his fingertips. Again, other than Tedro McMillan, not like he's dealing with generational ballers, other than Jalen Coker, who tracked down a beach ball that was on the field. That was a fun highlight. Shout out Cokeheads. But yeah, man, just again, been rough for pretty much everyone involved in this passing game. Even Tedro McMillan, Dwain, someone who, again, I've been hopeful and really still keeping in that low end wide receiver 2 conversation. Next week against the Saints would qualify as a good matchup. We just saw him go for 97 yards, almost 100 with Andy Dalton. Like, I have no doubt in my mind that Tedro McMillan is awesome, but as long as they have Rico, like we saw today, Bryce Young threw the football 20 times. And when we're trying to project the overall targets here for T-Mac next week, it's going to be tough, man. So probably, again, going to be starting in more lineups than not. But if you're ranking Tedro, closer to wide receiver 30 than wide receiver 20, I'm not going to have a big argument against it.
Yeah, and I mean, we knew this was going to be a tough spot for him today, but honestly, I still wish we would see Andy Dalton, and I know he looks terrible in the game before. We probably won't, right? Because Andy Dalton lost that game, and Bryce Young won this game against the Packers, even though we know it was not because of Bryce Young. But yeah, he's their clear-cut number one. Also, shout out to the equipment guy or the coach or whoever that was that got the beach ball. He didn't just like pop open the thing and just like press the air out. He literally like grabbed it and ripped it like He-Man. I was like, wow, impressive strength for like a kind of old-looking dude.
That was fantastic. So again, the highlight of the day for the Panthers really was that beach ball episode, other than, again, Rico Dowdle doing his thing. So good job to all parties involved. Meanwhile, with the Packers, again, just a situation where they seem to play with their food each and every week. I don't know if I've seen a team just play up and down their competition quite like the Packers. Only their second loss of the year. Fully well could still emerge as, the team to be in the NFC. Certainly we're not that today, though. So Jordan Love, 273 yards, 1 interception. That was a brutal deep duck. Almost had a second one that he was really getting clowned on Twitter. I would just say, guys, I know it was a hilarious looking play, runs around back there and throws it, and all you see is a Panthers defender in the end zone who then dropped it. But it was 4th and 8, so throw the ball. Don't pull a Derek Carr and throw it out of bounds like he tried to make a play. And then also Romeo Doubs had stepped out of bounds and basically quit on it. But whatever, either way, it wasn't a good performance from Jordan Love or really this entire passing game. That said, when you start looking at the injuries, Dwayne, it starts to make a little bit more sense. Unfortunately, Tucker Kraft is feared to have suffered a torn ACL per Ian Rappaport. Again, every once in a while, we see one of these not come to fruition, so not confirmed just yet, but not looking good for Tucker Kraft. Also got Matthew Golden's shoulder injury. Even Christian Watson was banged up for a little bit, but he wound up returning. So really is that Tucker Kraft injury, Dwayne, that's going to just be problematic for this entire offense, honestly, and obviously, fantasy managers as well. So I'm assuming we did see fellow, third-year tight end at this point, Luke Musgrave, step into a full every down role in his absence.
Yeah, it was interesting because Golden and Kraft both got hurt on the same drive. They lost those guys in like 3 plays apart. It was on the 4th drive for each of them. So Musgrave, after the knee injury to Kraft on the 4th possession, he had 88% of the routes, a 19% target share, which was tied for second on the team, 23 air yards. He had a 7.7 average depth of target. So look, this guy that they liked a lot. They drafted him well ahead of Tucker Kraft. I know it hasn't worked out yet, but with, all the injuries and things that they have right now, there could be something there with Musgrave. So if you guys are playing in deeper leagues, I would say he could be a target. If you're playing in like a 10-teamer and you don't have super deep benches or anything like that, you're probably not even bothering with Luke Musgrave right now. You'll just monitor the situation. But, a lot of you guys playing out in these, tight end premium streets and stuff where there's not anything on the waiver wire. I mean, this is a guy that was a first-round pick in Luke Musgrave. So he'll definitely be worth rostering in the spots like that. And then at the receiver spot, Ian, so Golden, prior to the injury to his shoulder, 71% route participation. So really in the same role that we had seen before. But Christian Watson, prior to the Matthew Golden injury, 86% route participation. Of course, then he got hurt and, on that one weird play. And so he missed some time, ended up only with a 79% route participation. But it looks like Watson, and again, we didn't have Dontavian Wicks today. We didn't have Jaden Reed today. There's a lot of moving parts here, for the Packers. But Watson, could very easily be a full-time player.
Obviously, Romeo Dobbs continues to be the most productive wide receiver, caught 7 of 10 targets for 91 yards today. But Watson, man, went down there, made a real nice 52-yard catch. And as much as Jordan Love sometimes does tend to throw an ill-advised deep ball into double coverage, man, as Christian Watson's only got one guy on him, he has shown the ability to go up and win that battle. So certainly Christian Watson looking like at a minimum, man, he could be that boomer bust wide receiver 4 that we were thinking would kind of be worst case scenario for Matthew Golden. So otherwise, shout out to Josh Jacobs, now has 27 touchdowns 26 games with the Packers. He continues to absolutely ball out. Think that's about it. Dwayne, you good on the Packers?
Yep. We're good. Let's do it.
Fantastic. Let's move on to the Chargers taking down the Titans 27-20. Tennessee did cover as 9.5-point dogs. So, remember that LA, good teams win, great teams cover. Of course, we did get the over to cash here of 44.5. So Justin Herbert, 250 yards and 2 touchdowns through the air. But man, more offensive line injuries. Joe Alt with another high ankle sprain could require surgery per Adam Schefter. They were already without Mekhi Becton, and even offensive tackle Bobby Hart got hurt with a groin injury. So we ended up seeing Herbert sacked not once, not twice, 6 freaking times, people. And just, a situation where honestly could have been more if he wasn't so athletic. Wound up taking off and scrambling a lot. I do believe he now leads the NFL in scramble yards, chipped in 57 yards on the ground and a touchdown. I will say, Dwayne, I heard no one else announce this or talk about it, but Justin, let's do something else rather than slide into the end zone, because I would not have been surprised if they said he started that slide at the 1-inch line and decided to put it down there. Would have been a dick move by the refs, but just anything else, Justin. So great performance there. And it's one of these weird things, man, where we almost saw this down the second half of last year. I think maybe it was more so because they only had one wide receiver they could trust, but it is this weird phenomenon where, of course, we want Justin Herbert to have these crystal clean pockets at all times, but when he is forced to kind of move around more, Dwayne, he ends up tapping into that rushing upside more, and we get performances like this one.
Yeah, 27.7 fantasy points today for Justin Herbert. And there were a lot of massive performances today, but I mean, Herbert had his own, threw for 250 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did have the 1 pick, and yes, 9 carries for 57 yards. And you talked about his scrambling, like it's just like gone to another level over the last 3 to 4 games. And to your point, probably because he's just like, to survive, like this is what I'm going to have to do. Right. And he just does it in really critical moments too, man. It's kind of backbreaking for the defenses. He's not like a real agile guy, but I mean, he's good in the pocket, but like as a runner, but man, he has really good straight line speed, and he just kind of understands the angles and different things. So yeah, Herbert looking really good. Obviously though, these offensive line injuries, we know what they can do to him because we've already seen it happen before this year. And it sounds like it could be surgery for Joe Alt, high ankle sprain. So we'll see what we hear on that tomorrow. And to your point, it could be the cluster injury impact. So Friedman's going to be grinding the numbers on that, guys. Probably going to be a 5-star bet against the Chargers, by the time it all gets said and done next week.
Chargers are going to be facing the Steelers on Sunday Night Football. Ooh. Get your popcorn ready for that one. I mentioned the 2 touchdowns for Herbert. One went to their fullback defensive tackle convert, Scott Matlock. So I'm sure that was just thrilling for fantasy managers. The other one, though, was The other one was, though, to Quentin Johnson. Good to see him back, and actually making plays again. Beautiful throw by Herbert, 20 yards, basically lofted it just high enough to get the QJ in between 2 defenders on a flag route. So good stuff from the passing game. Lab McConkey, 56 yards. Around the Gadsden, 68 yards, so continuing to do their things as well. As we've talked about, again, just only one football to go around. So you're going to have performances like Keenan Allen, only 41 scoreless yards. I guess the only question would be, Dwayne, did we continue to see Keenan kind of squeezed out? Because I know you were saying a situation where, when they are using more 2 tight ends or just, only really leaving Keenan out there and 3 wide receivers. Unfortunately in 2025, Dwayne, you can't catch the football if you're not out there on the field. So what we see from Keenan?
Keenan Allen is getting a downgrade. This is the second week in a row. So he only scored 6.1 fantasy points today, 54% route participation today, 50% last week. So there's 2 things that are happening. They're using more of the heavy personnel, and it's not just that bumping him off the field. We're also getting on these other plays where they want to check to the run or whatever. They're putting Trey Harris out there. And so Trey Harris, his routes, 36% today with a 7% target share. And then last week, Trey Harris had a larger route. So they're wanting to grow the role for the rookie, and they're starting to use more of this heavy personnel. And now Trey Harris does get a lot of his work when they go heavy. I guess he's a really good blocker, and they like him out there at that time. But it's really that combination of things, man. And so Keenan Allen, he's definitely downgrading. Like I think we just have to move him all the way down to like probably mid-range or low-end wide receiver 3. I don't want to go wide receiver 4 yet, because as soon as we do, he'll have like an 85% route participation the next game. But 2 games in a row, man. And it's not like they were blowing out the Titans today. Like this ended up being a closer game than really what, the Chargers wanted it to be, because the Titans special teams and defense made some nice plays early in the game. The pick six, obviously, by Justin Herbert got them off to a good start. So yeah, this is definitely concerning for Keenan Allen. Like you said with QJ, he did get back on the board. It's just basically, you know how it goes. Like, he had a couple down games. Now it was his game to get back and get going again.
Dwain mentioned it really wasn't a blowout here in this one. Going in the fourth quarter, it really was just a 20-17 lead there for the Chargers, which, again, should have been just fine for Kamani Vidal to do his thing, particularly against a Titans team that was without run-stuffing defensive tackle Jeffrey Simmons, but just wasn't his day, Dwain. I think it's probably easy enough just to point at that aforementioned banged-up offensive line. Only 12 carries for 30 yards for Kamani Vidal, but I was also surprised to see Jarrett Patterson find his way to 9 carries. So did you see a meaningful, downgrade for Kamani in terms of how he actually was being utilized?
Yeah, real stinker, man. Like, he was, I very rarely give players the smash play status because you have to check off multiple boxes, right? You have to have the utilization, then you have to have the spread in the game, which is largely favoring your team, and then you have to have one of the best team totals on the week, and then you also have to have the matchup. He had all 4 of those things going for him, and he gave you 3 fantasy points today, and that's just like how stuff goes. But still had 72% of the snaps in, 28% for Jarrett Patterson. And most of Patterson's work did come later in the game, so I don't know. I mean, it could have been a hot hand thing, but 48% of the attempts to Vidal, 36% to Patterson, but 62% routes versus 10%. So, like, he was still clearly, like, if you look at the snaps and routes and stuff, he was still clearly the guy. Almost kind of had a Patriots backfield vibe, though, where we see one guy with all the snaps and somehow, like, the rushing attempts are closer. So obviously, like, when the second back is out there, they're just handing them the football. But I'm with you. I'm not going to get overly worried about it. I think the biggest worry will be back to what you started with, which is the offensive line injuries. If we've got multiple guys out, like, that's not going to be good for Vidal.
Again, we'll see the Chargers facing the Steelers on Sunday Night Football, so plenty of time to start with those O-line injuries. But yeah, at a minimum, look, it's not like Vidal was someone we had in the top 10, but he was starting to approach that RB1 borderline. Goes to show us that just when we think we got our ducks in a row in fantasy football land, sometimes those best laid plans don't go quite the way we were thinking. But still, good stuff from the Chargers, now sitting pretty at 6-3. Not so good stuff for the Titans. Only had 10 first downs on the day, went 1 for 9 on third down. They do have a bye in week 10, Dwain, so I'm hesitant in putting too much stock into anything because, as we know, there is a potential for a lot of these guys to be traded. So we did hear from Teron Davenport saying the team is not shopping Calvin Ridley, contrary to some other insider reports out there. Either way, who even knows when Ridley's going to be back? We have not heard one thing about this guy's hamstring injury, and that continues to piss me off to no end. Only thing I got would be shout out to DK for having a punt return touchdown. He also got tackled at the 1 yard line and did not score on the same drive. It also featured Tony Pollard get stuffed at the 1 yard line twice. So just unfortunate, Dwain. I think the only thing we could really hope for, the one saving grace we could have on this team, would be if they split up the backfield, because otherwise, man, I just don't see anyone emerging as a consistent starter in the second half of the season.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot to hit here. DK, 92% route participation. He led all their receivers. So he had 7.5 fantasy points today. Obviously not a great day, but he's kind of the one potential silver lining for them. Like you said, we'll see what happens with Calvin Ridley. I will say with Spears, like, he just continues to outplay Pollard. I know Pollard had 59% of the snaps today, 46% to Spears. So it's kind of a situation where Pollard just keeps going down our ranks. And Spears, like, he's right there in that borderline running back 3 territory because he gets all the 2-minute offense. And guess what this team does? It needs to use its 2-minute offense quite a bit, guys.
So again, Cam Ward continues to flash the arm talent multiple times every single week, but even in these last 4 games, when we talked about it, man, 150 yards, per game in the first 4, 250 in the next 4. Let's face it, a lot of that was also in garbage time. So hopefully better days ahead. They will have the bye week to go ahead and hopefully get on the right track. Moving right along, we had the Patriots take down the Falcons 24-23. Atlanta did cover as 5.5-point dogs. The over here cash just barely at 45.5. Drake May, another 2 touchdowns through the air, found Demario Douglas on a nicely designed wheel route from the backfield. Also got Stephon Diggs, who just continues to flash, some underrated yak ability. That said, Dwain, the wide receiver core did suffer a very unfortunate injury. Kayshon Boutte with a hamstring issue led to a goose egg and just seems like something that maybe could keep him sidelined. So we know we got Diggs doing his thing, being the wide receiver 1 far more weeks than not. Pop Douglas is going to be the guy in the slot. Did we see Kyle Williams get a bump, or was it your favorite player, someone who was sporting a very nice retro military outfit going in, the no-shoe assassin himself, Matt Collins?
No, Matt Collins is just guys. Like I'm not even gonna talk about him. I'm not even gonna honor Ian's, his attempt here, to get me to talk about Matt Collins. But yeah, you did mention Kyle Williams. He had a 50% route participation, and most of it came after we saw the injury. He didn't do anything with it. He had a 4% target share, and then Pop Douglas, 20 PPR points today, man. Dude only ran a route on 33% of the dropbacks, so still not playing much. 134 air yards. He turned from a Pop into Boom Douglas. So we'll see what happens, but not playing enough to matter. So it's just Stephon Diggs or bust, really, with this offense. Hunter Henry, like high end tight end too, kind of thing.
Again, win is a win is a win. I will say we did continue to see the one flaw that still exists in Drake May's game. He took 6 sacks in this one. It's just his performance under pressure, Dwain. As much as this guy can run around and make any throw on the field, only Cam Ward actually has allowed a higher percentage of his pressure dropbacks to turn to sacks this season. So again, Drake May was coming out considered a very raw prospect. The fact this is really the only thing I think he needs to actively be too worried about says a lot of something. But yeah, just something to keep an eye on there. Probably, again, his kind of gunslinger mentality, still having a double-digit average target depth in this game can help explain that. Really did bury the lead here, though, as I'm known to do, because Travion Henderson, Dwain, was the running back, y'all. Didn't get the touchdown. Terrell Jennings doing his thing near the goal line. And to Jennings' credit, was out there running hard. But what did we see from Henderson? Someone who, again, a couple short weeks ago, Dwain, I was doubtful would even get a chance to have the every down role if something happened to Ramondre Stevenson. It did seem like that came to fruition, though.
Yeah, it did. 12.7 PPR points. He had 75% of the snaps versus 25% for Jennings. And like you said, Jennings ran hard as well, but it's like unfortunate. And that wasn't like a sub-in thing. It's just kind of the way it worked out. And Jennings happened to be the one out there to get the carry, and he scored the touchdown. And so Hendo didn't get the touchdown. Would have been a lot cooler if he did. But 56% of the attempts, 73% route participation, 100% of the 2-minute snaps, which there were 5 of them in the game. And then he had a 21% target share. So just needed the touchdown, man. Had we had the touchdown, we get, 18, 19 fantasy points instead of the 12.7. But yeah, right now, if we were to have another game where we didn't have Ramondre Stevenson, who's dealing with that toe injury, I think we would feel pretty confident, giving Hendo probably 50 to 60% of the rushing attempts, but all the passing down work and the projections.
Probably like a top 20 back, Dwain. I don't think, in a matchup next week against the Buccaneers, we'll be putting them in the top 12 or anything like that. But I know this last week when you just kind of looked at our kind of low end RB2 range, I mean, there were guys like Alvin Kamara there, J.K. Dobbins in a tough matchup, and, just even Dave Montgomery. Like, I'd be fine with Henderson over those guys. We are at the point where 75% of the workload, or at least the snaps, man, like that to me goes longer than some of those other names I just said.
Yeah, and when we've seen him on the field this year, like he's definitely, been a guy they've targeted. They had just kind of taken away his routes, in those last few games, and we were kind of scratching our head with like, okay, that was the one thing he was doing early in the year, and then they weren't even giving him those reps. So seeing those come back, like what he can do as a receiver, that helps him a lot. Now, look, we still didn't see a huge play. He wasn't hyper efficient today. He didn't score the touchdown. There's a lot more things we need, but to your point, man, when you see that number 7.5 with a percentage behind it, and then you say snaps, that usually leads to fantasy points.
Again, tough to move those guys down too low in the ranks. Something that, again, when you just are doing ranks week after week, answering a bunch of start-sit questions, just keeping yourself up at night, Dwain, with the mistakes we make. We do tend to just go ahead and trust that volume more than anything. So otherwise, good to see Hunter Henry have 51 yards after a handful of duds in a row. Didn't find the end zone, but still going to be in that, weekly kind of touchdown-dependent tight end 2 conversation. Meanwhile, for the Falcons, just 1 for 10 on third down, man. That was really the tale of this game. Falcons were 1 for 10. Patriots were 8 for 12. And again, just couldn't quite get anything going for the Falcons other than throwing the football up to Drake London and watching him do his thing. 9 catches, 118 yards, not 1, not 2, but 3 touchdowns. He had a sick one-hander for his third score of the game. Also caught just an amazing pass down the sideline over Christian Gonzalez. That probably would have been the catch of the week if, T. Higgins decided to take the day off. So has 100-plus yards and a touchdown in 3 of his last 4 games, a.k.a. the 3 games that Michael Penix was out there doing his thing. A situation, Dwayne, where, again, if you wanted to rank Drake London as wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5 next week, who might have called you crazy?
Yeah, I mean, it's just the inconsistency of Penix. Like that's what we worry about. Like, so London, look, we love him. He gave you the 39 fantasy points today, 41% target share, 143 air yards. So absolutely just balling out. You mentioned the 3 touchdowns. It's just going to be a little bit of an up and down ride, but I think he's I'm not going to upgrade him, but we've had him in our top 12. Like, so
Right.
like we like Drake London, like we like him. We just know there's a little bit of inconsistency with the passing game that keeps us from nudging him up into that top 6 with some of the names we know we can trust more, like Jamar and Puka and JSN, where it's, consistency is a myth in fantasy football. Like, really all you're looking for are the guys that score the most. But whenever you start slicing hairs between guys that are all really close together, like, I think we can say we have a little less trust in Penix than what we do Sam Darnold, Matthew Stafford, some other guys like that. So that's the main thing that keeps him from entering that company. But I think the talent, Ian, I think the talent is there. I mean, and he's shown us that the underlying data has always been there for him, but he's just never scored the fantasy points. Now, last year he got on the right track towards the end of the year, or the second half of the season. But it's funny because and Sigmund Bloom came on Talk Data to me last week, and he was one of the guys he talked about. He was just worried, about, and Sigmund sent me a DM. He goes, well, Drake London dunked on my head. And I was like, yeah, but you got Rico Dowdle right. So, you're doing really good. But with London, it's just the inconsistency of Penix. Like, that's the main thing that keeps him from really, like, us establishing him as a top 6 wide receiver the rest of the way.
Luckily, even if there are some inconsistencies, we do see this volume, man, being pretty consistent between these guys. And accordingly, London team high 14 targets, really was concentrated around the big 3. London with 14, Bijan Robinson with 10. Couldn't find the end zone, got tackled just short on one occasion, still had 96 total yards. And then Kyle Pitts with 7 targets as well. Darnell Mooney with 2, and then David Stills with 1. The only other guys catching Penix's eye, even for a brief snap or two. So Pitts, again, has been coming on strong. Was ranked as a top 10 tight end for us going this week. Would have been a lot cooler if he found the end zone in what was on paper a good matchup. Still could be around that tight end 1 borderline as we get into week 10, though, for another freaking European matchup. I thought we were done with these, Dwain, but nope. We got the Falcons taking on the Colts Sunday morning in Berlin. So shout out to Germany, my motherland, I guess you could say. Oktoberfest is a great movie, beer fest, I should say. But yeah, man, just disappointing to anyone trying to sleep in a little bit, but I digress. Let's move on. 49ers took down the Giants 34-24. They covered with ease as 2.5 point faves over cashier of 47.5. This one really wasn't even that close, guys. It was 27-10 with 11:35 left in the fourth, at which point Jackson Dart and company did stage a mini comeback of sorts. So honestly, man, I think it's been 5 or 6, I think 6 starts here for Dart, and they've had opening drive touchdowns in 4 of them. They are just absolute money in the scripted sequence, and then things have gotten a little bit tougher. Obviously, when you don't have Malik Neighbors and company, it's not going to make life easy, but yeah, we'll get to them more in a minute anyway. With the 49ers, Dwayne, Mac Jones, speaking of having a good start in the game, 14 of 14 at halftime, even playing through a bloody nose out there. I'll say this too, kind of going back mid last week and seeing some of the throws he was able to make against the Texans. There were a good 5 or 6, man, that receivers just couldn't quite come up with. We saw him do this at the end of the Jacksonville, season last year, really getting BTJ going. I don't know if Mac Jones is going to be a next Sam Darnold or anything. I'm not, ready to put that out there in the universe, but at a minimum, man, I'd be interested to see what Mac Jones could do with another legit starting opportunity somewhere after seeing what he's done this year.
Yeah, I mean, and he's put up, good numbers really with an unhealthy team. I mean, honestly, it's like CMC is everything. So yeah, I'm with you. I think Mac Jones, I think he will get an opportunity, to go somewhere and potentially, battle for a starting job.
Raiders
Who knows?
next year?
Maybe. I mean, or it might be a team, that has a young quarterback that they want somebody to challenge them. So we'll see what happens. But I'm with you. I think Mac Jones has played really well. 235 yards today with 9.8 yards per attempt. So the yards per attempt really nice through the 2 touchdown passes. But yeah, now he does like almost. I think he's hurt like all the time. Like every time I look up, I was like, oh no, Mac, like get up today. Today it was just a bloody nose, so it wasn't as bad as some of the injuries that we've seen him kind of battle through earlier in the year. But we'll see what happens with Brock Purdy. But it sounds like every week is like Brock Purdy inching closer, and they in the books even we'll kind of treat it like it's going to be Brock Purdy in the game, and then we get to the end of the week, we're like, nah, it's Mac Jones again.
Well, it's funny because throughout all that, Dwayne, they're also like, yeah, and by the way, Mac Jones is dealing with an ankle and a shoulder injury himself. And then he ends up, toughing it out. So I'm not trying to throw any shade at Brock. I'm sure he'll be out there when he and doctors deem he is ready. Hopefully that is again next Sunday when the Niners take on the Rams again. But yeah, I mentioned the 2 touchdowns from Mac Jones. One to Christian McCaffrey, got left completely wide open in the end zone. Probably shouldn't do that, Giants, but I am not a defensive coordinator. Also on Jawan Jennings on a smooth whip route for a touchdown. So CMC, over 170 total yards, 2 scores, also ran one in. continuing to do all sorts of CMC things out there. Also, shout out to Brian Robinson, guys, continues to be one of the best handcuffs that you can roster. Had a steamroll of an 18-yard touchdown where he put poor Deonte Banks on his back. So I mentioned the Jennings score, Kendrick Bourne 34 yards, George Kittle 32 scoreless yards. Just unfortunate there. Any real, takeaways from the wide receiver room, Dwayne? Because it's just one of those things where we know Ricky Pearsall is probably going to be back soon. Brandon Ayuk's going to be due back soon as well. Just seems like, for right now, Juwan Jennings deserves to be in that wide receiver 3 conversation, but I'm just worried what's going to happen to him once this entire offense is healthy.
Yeah, but I'll say over the last 3 games, man, like every week, like he's had a good target share. And we saw Juwan Jennings last season still eat even whenever they got some of their other weapons back. So we'll see what happens with Pearsall and Ayuk, to your point. But 22% target share today gave you 14.1 PPR points. The only thing I would say is like George Kittle, I would go try to buy him. Like I still believe in George Kittle. Like I know he's not done what we hoped he would do since he's gotten back from injury. But I don't know, Ian. It's just like that. Like we know better kind of thing. Like he's still George Kittle. Like this is still the 49ers offense. We know Brock Purdy will eventually be back too. So yeah, that's what I would say. Go buy George Kittle.
I like that call. Like that call a lot, Dwayne. Over with those Giants. Mentioned Jackson Dart. Found the end zone twice more as a passer, once as a rusher. I think they did end up finding the end zone on the drive, so it wouldn't be an extra score. But he also threw an absolute pearl of a ball to Darius Slayton. Unfortunately, Slayton could not hold on, went right through his hands. So back-to-back sheeshy weeks there for Darius Slayton. Did wind up with a team high 62 yards, so it wasn't all for naught, but just unfortunate there. Scam Dale Robinson back doing his thing. Caught 9 of 11 targets for 46 scoreless yards. His next gen route tree looks straight out of mid 2024. So keep an eye out for that. But just it's the Jackson Dart experience, Dwayne. He has honestly come forward. And I know you had him as like the QB6 this week. And obviously facing a banged up 49ers defense help matters. But guess what? He gets to face the Bears next week, man. So if you want to fire him up QB6, QB5, go right ahead, man.
QB1 versus the Bears. 27.2 fantasy points today. 191 yards passing, 2 passing touchdowns, and yes, he gave you another rushing touchdown, 8 carries for 56 yards. So in his 6 starts, Ian, 22.3 fantasy points per game with 196 passing yards per game. And guys, he had a real slow start, in the passing department. So 1.7 passing touchdowns per game, 42 rushing yards per game, and 0.8 rushing touchdowns per game. Like, yeah, man, that's what a mid-range QB1 looks like. And that's what Jackson Dart's been.
He's been better than that. He's the QB4. Only Knicks, Stafford, and Mahomes have outscored this dude. Crazy, man.
Yeah, actually, that's a high-end QB1 if you're in a 12-teamer.
Where do you think, Dwayne, just pulse check, what do you think Jackson Dart's position ADP is next year?
He'll be top 8. Yeah. He'll be top 8. I think people.
I don't think he's going to be a late rounder.
No, he won't be. No, I think he'll be. Look, man, people know the dual threat stuff now. And so, and we'll know that Malik Neighbors is coming back. They might add another weapon to go with Malik. Like that. Yeah. Just knowing Neighbors coming back alone, right, is already going to be enough to just like get people freaking out about Jackson Dart. There'll be people that'll rank him too high is what's going to happen. Which maybe you can't rank him too high. He's balling out.
I was about to say, can you rank Jackson Dart too high? My call.
Would you be surprised? Yeah. Like, and Jaden Daniels, we'll get to him in a minute. I know he hurt his arm tonight. I've been waiting to see if there's another update on that. But like, I could see people wanting Jackson Dart over Jaden Daniels.
I got a good one for you. If they banned the tush push, Jackson Dart over Jalen Hurts.
Oh yeah, I would. Because Jalen doesn't scramble as much anymore. I mean, he's scrambling, but he's just not the same athlete, right, that he once was. So
I was trying to break that.
Yeah. That'd be a killer.
I was trying to break it down last week, and I was kind of just taking the percentage points. I was like, if you take 50% or 25% of what Jalen Hurts has been getting from the 1 yard line. I mean, he goes from, again, being an elite world beater fantasy QB to being more of a mid-range, low-end QB1. So still very good. Don't get it twisted, but Jackson Dart potentially could do more. Again, you take away that cheat code. Otherwise, Theo Johnson, another nice touchdown, 15 yards of yak fill. But I guess, Dwayne, the most fantasy relevant story of all this with the Giants would be this new Cam Scatterboo-less backfield. We all assumed that Tyron Tracy would be the lead back because that's what happened last year. That's also what happened last week after Scatterboo was sidelined. Didn't seem to be the case out there though, for at least one game.
No, it wasn't. And we had a pretty big sample last week after Scatterboo went down because it was early in that game, and then we had last year where they turned this backfield over to Tracy, for most of the season, and they just flipped right away from that. Man, Singletary outsnapped Tyrone Tracy today, 55 to 45%. 47% of the rushing attempts went to Singletary. 29% of the rushing attempts went to Tyrone Tracy. And it wasn't a game script thing. Like, you can go back to right away early in the game. They were already doing this with Singletary. They both played on the first drive, but this was a trend that established early on. So don't know if it was a matchup based thing. Don't know if it's because Tyrone Tracy had a 13% target share. Maybe they want to use him more in that capacity because he did have more routes than Singletary. But that's almost what this felt like, was like, okay, Singletary is going to be our base down back. We're going to let him get more of the early down stuff. Tracy will spell him every few drives, and we're going to give Tracy the passing down work. Again, guys, just like last week, we thought we really saw a trend here. Now we have another data point. So I think it's really hard to say, but I can say this, like, I don't feel very confident about this. I mean, if you've got Singletary and Tracy, and you already know Jackson Dart's going to do his thing, Ian, and he helps the offense overall, but this is not a good enough offense for us to have a backfield split like this. Like, we're not going to want either one of these things in fantasy.
And this is like supposed to be the relief part of the schedule. I know the 49ers are supposed to be better before some of these injuries, but again, mentioned the Bears. After that, man, Packers, Lions, Patriots before their bye, like, things ease up a little bit better in the fantasy playoffs, but I'm not going to be rushing to, start this dude when we're facing the Packers and Lions. I know what Rico Dowdle just did, but still.
Yeah, we have to downgrade Tracy to running back 3 territory, and like Singletary guys, he's probably a running back 4 right now. Again, not super excited to start either one of them. The one thing I'll say about Singletary is he is available a lot. And if something were to happen to Tracy, then he would be in a full-time role. And as much as people like to hate on Devin Singletary, we've seen him a few times, Ian, when he was given that full-time workload 2 years ago at the end of the season with the Houston Texans.
Yep.
You were getting fantasy points out of that. Like, he's a capable NFL running back. We're not saying he's a superstar, but he can play across all down. So I think probably the biggest takeaway, like, if you went out and spent all your fab on Tracy last week, like, you hate this news, but there's nothing you can do. Like, you have Tyrone Tracy now. He's a running back 3 after this week. The big thing you can do, though, is you can go grab Singletary. Especially, I don't really want Singletary and Tracy on my team, but you guys that need running back, you need a handcuff. Singletary is available in a lot of leagues.
Look, I know we were hoping that Tracy was going to be this weekly top 15 option. It's not too dissimilar, Dwayne, from how things went down with Woody Marks, I think, in Houston, where, guess what? You got Woody Marks, and you're not as thrilled as you thought you were going to be. Still going to be hard to rank more than 24, 25 running backs ahead of him. I do think Tracy will be in that, kind of mess of an RB3 range with Bill Krosky-Merritt, Woody Marks, maybe Alvin Kamara, Bam Knight, amongst others. So, again, that is what we had going on there with the Giants backfield. They are going to be facing the Bears next week. Only other injury I would note, 49ers rookie first rounder Michael Williams feared to have a torn ACL. Injuries just keep on coming to that San Fran D. Moving right along, we had a pretty big upset. The Steelers took down the Colts 27-20. Steelers were only 3-point dogs going into this, but kudos to them for knocking off the 7-1, now 7-2. Indianapolis Colts underdid cash here at 51.5. And honestly, man, it wasn't even this close. This game was 27-10 with under 7 minutes remaining in the fourth quarter. Got some garbage time stuff from Daniel Jones and company. But hell yeah, to the Pittsburgh Steelers, 203 yards and a touchdown from Aaron Rodgers. Pretty nice one, man. The Pat Fryermuth down the seam. Continuing to see Rodgers, really managed to put that football wherever he wants when given the benefit of a clean pocket. Now he also throws downfield less than just about any quarterback. He's still got a howitzer, man, when he actually does decide to throw that thing, but just a 2.9 yard average target depth. So a lot of checkdowns, a lot of tight end business, a lot of Darnell Washington near the goal line for whatever reason, Dwayne. So we did see Darnell drop a touchdown, but just a passing game that should be enabling DK Metcalf to great heights because we have a bunch of tight ends on the field and checkdowns to running backs. But unfortunately, man, we're just not quite getting that. They even gave DK a pop pass. They give him a lot of screens. I mean, I was kind of going through some of the Khalil Shakir yak stuff last week, and it's like it's him and DK Metcalf at the top of the league in all these categories. It's disappointing, man. You look at some of the efficiency stuff, and they tell you that Metcalf's having a good year, but here we are, man. 2 catches, 6 yards, and what was a smash spot.
Yeah, I mean, look, the biggest challenge here is this is a slow offense. Like, I mean, they run like 53 plays, 54 plays a game. They had 57 in this one. So it'll be interesting to see where it comes in. And that's been the challenge for Metcalf. Now today they actually threw the ball, even though they had the lead, against the Colts. They threw the ball 35 times and ran the ball 23 times. So there was actually enough passing volume for Metcalf to have a bigger day. So we know he's the best wide receiver on the team, Ian, but there's just and Aaron Rodgers is good enough to support him, but they don't feel the need to force it to him right now. So like, I don't know, like Metcalf he's like a boom bust wide receiver 3. Like, we moved him up a little bit, where he had that little stretch with Aaron Rodgers, but we talk about this all the time. It's also just variance, I mean, this is just the way this stuff goes. And we just have to kind of face the facts, I think, with DK Metcalf, Ian. It's like, we've hoped that he would become a wide receiver 1 for a long time. And then we kind of settled into that groove where we're like, yeah, he's just a good wide receiver 2. Well, on this offense, like, he might just be a wide receiver 3, which is weird because there's really no one else to challenge him. So probably low end wide receiver 2 is, what we're looking at, but he's definitely got a boom bust to his game. And also shout out to Mr. Matthew Friedman, 5-star bet again this week on the Steelers to cover this spread. And I think most people thought that Friedman was probably crazy, but guys, he has a system, he has a model, and it loved the Steelers this week. So maybe you guys bet it.
DK Metcalf, 13.2 PPR points per game on the season, just the wide receiver 26, though. So certainly is looking like a wide receiver 3. And as Bill Parcells once said, you are what your fantasy ranking says you are. So, hey, score a touchdown 5 his last 6 games before this one. So it's not like you can't use the guy. I'm with Dwain. Probably still will be ranking him around wide receiver 20 more weeks than that. But again, I expected a little bit more out of him this year. We'll see if that could come in the second half. But this really was the most Steelers game ever, Dwain. They got outgained 368 to 225 in total yards, but again, comfortably won. So Mike Tomlin on his Mike Tomlin game. So we'll see what happens with the rest of these wide receivers. There's a nice game from Calvin Austin, caught 5 of 6 targets for 56 yards. Like, he is the 2. They're bringing in Marquez Valdes-Scantling next week. That's when he's going to be officially signed. Obviously, Steelers have also been a team where they've been, heavily spruced up in the trade rumors with guys like Rashid Shaheed, amongst others. So we'll see what happens. But again, if we can't get consistent production out of Metcalf, I'm not too inclined to believe we're going to get out in these other wide receivers or tight ends, because who knows who's going to be getting the opportunities. The good news is, Dwain, Jaylen Warren, first touchdowns of the season on the ground. Only took, how many freaking carries. Actually wasn't efficient at all, but, Kareem hunted his way, if you will, the 2 goal line touchdowns. So sure seems like he continues to be the running back y'all in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, 16.9 PPR points a day from Warren, 57% of the snaps, 76% of the rushing attempts, 100% of the snaps inside the 5, and they had 8 of them. He got all of them, and that's really critical stuff. Now, the 2-minute offense still went to Kenneth Gainwell, so we know he's kind of doing his thing, but that Warren's still a guy that can earn targets. Didn't necessarily come through in that capacity today, only 6% with the way that this game worked out. But yeah, had a little bit of Johnson as well, 8% snaps, 5% of the rushing attempts for the rookie in a game script where they were leading. So we've now seen, I think, 2 out of the last 5 games where they actually kind of had a lead like this. Those are the games where we see a little bit of Caleb Johnson, like kind of just a slight smidge of him mixing as a third guy. But yeah, big takeaway here. We've been talking about Jaylen Warren. We've been talking about how Dewey is. And even though the efficiency wasn't great, it was good to see the 2 touchdowns.
And again, guys, this was supposed to be, Indy's actually been pretty good against running backs, fantasy points wise. The schedule really opens up nicely for Jaylen Warren down the stretch. So good to see him still manage to come through, even in his tougher spot. Going to be another tough one next week. They're facing off again against the Chargers on Sunday Night Football. But after that, it is basically green matchup after green matchup. Over with those Colts, Dwain, they had 4 total turnovers in the first 8 weeks of the season combined. Daniel Jones had 5 today, 3 interceptions, lost 2 fumbles, wound up throwing for 342 yards and even, found his way into the end zone. Vulture Jonathan Taylor from the 1-yard line, as he's done a few times this season. But just unfortunate, man. Like, he was doing such a good job earlier in the year of not letting these pressures turn to turnovers or sacks. Really, it wasn't the case today at all. So, I still think we've seen far more good ball than bad. Again, I don't want to be the guy where it's just like, oh, yeah, this is the real Colts, Dwain, because the Colts were the best team in the league by pretty much any measure you want to look at. This was the most efficient offense of the 21st century in points per drive before today, guys. That is not a hyperbole. That is a straight up fact. So I'm not saying I'm completely throwing it out, man, but at least in terms of our fantasy ranks next week, we got the Colts facing the Falcons in Berlin. I mean, I'm not going to let this one completely hold me back from starting Daniel Jones, Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman, like I probably would before this game.
Yeah, we have 9 data points on the Colts offenses, and then this is the only one that's looked like this. We should just throw it out. That's exactly what we should do. We
Huh,
should throw it in the
so,
trash can
I'm
and,
in.
like, move forward. I mean, it is what it is. Like, you made a great call on Pierce. Pierce had a huge day today. Not huge in fantasy, but 17.5 PPR points. Dude had 212 air yards. So, yeah, look, sometimes you know how it goes, man. Like, you've played the game, you just run into a buzzsaw some games, and you just got to move forward. And that's it. There's nothing really to add here. I mean, Josh Downs had a 75% route participation in a game where they were getting their wheels blown off. Like, we can't even get to an 85%. He did score 15.7 PPR points. Shout out Peter Overzet. Our CEO Elliot has a chat channel with me, Ian, Peter, and a bunch of other, content creators. And he asks for our bets every Sunday morning for his round robin. And I think every week Overzet is Josh Downs touchdown. I think Elliot even said today, I just really respect your ability to keep pacing that in there, Pete. Well, it did hit. So Pete, you were right today.
Only negative for Downs was he muffed a punt, which took away 2 points. But yeah, 57 yards and a touchdown continues to be very good at football, as is his brother Caleb for the undefeated #1 ranked Ohio State Buckeyes. But Pierce, 115 yards. Pittman, 115 yards. Tyler Warren was just the one dud. And honestly, Dwayne, just the one thing I would say is it's good to see some of these extreme man zone splits play out, because that was what we were talking about with this. Tyler Warren, the running backs, honestly, probably being the culprits against a man-heavy team like the Steelers. So I wish Tyler Warren would have gone off. Don't get it twisted. But just something to keep in mind when we do have the extreme teams like the Steelers. Moving on to the lowest scoring game of the week, I believe. The Broncos beat the Texans 18-15. Denver came in as 2-point dogs, though, and managed to get the victory outright. The under, of course, cashed here at 40.5. So Bo Nix continued to make a couple plays down the stretch, and between then, man, could not get too much going. Did throw one pretty bad pick where we didn't see the safety coming over. Found Courtland Sutton for a touchdown over Derek Stingley, who has made me eat my words before, but I kid you not, Dwayne. I have not seen a #1 corner just regularly considered one of the best in the game get beat as often as Derek Stingley. So I won't go off on a rant, but yeah, Courtland Sutton got him on one. RJ Harvey also won downfield on a wheel route. So again, Sutton maybe been a little bit more inconsistent than we prefer, but RJ Harvey, Dwayne, 4 touchdowns now in the last 2 weeks. Surely this means a bigger role has come along. Probably not.
Yeah, it didn't. 31% of the snaps. It was a season high in route participation. So if you guys are looking for something, and it was a whopping 44%. Now, you're probably thinking, so Dwayne, did Tyler Baday's role go away? No, it didn't. He had 31% route participation and 23% of the snaps. So we still had this 3-way committee. Obviously, like, if you're looking for something with Harvey, it's just the fact that we know he's a playmaker. And he just keeps showing up with plays. Guess what playmakers do? They score touchdowns, and that's what RJ Harvey's doing. So we just hope that hopefully he does get a little bit more work. It just makes it really hard, though, Ian, to like project him. Like, you know how it is. Like, I know you're the one, you have to tell me, hey, man, let's get these projections up. But like, when you have these guys in these part-time roles like this, it's really hard to be like too optimistic about them. So I mean, I try to give the guy some love in the touchdown department each week, because I know that's how he can come through, and that typically like gets him in a good spot in the projections. But at the same time, it's hard to like imagine consistency or like a true unleashing of his talent until we see something change here. And like we said, J.K. Dobbins is also playing good as well. If we could just get rid of the Tyler Bidet show, things would be a lot better. Just give all those snaps to Harvey, man.
It's not too different from, we'll get to the Jaguars in a little bit, but I'm tired of people tearing down Travis Etienne to prop up Bashaw Tootin. If you want to tear someone down, tear down LaQuint Allen Jr., with all due respect to LaQuint Allen Jr. Dwayne, question for you. Who leads the 2025 Denver Broncos in targets?
Troy Franklin.
Troy freaking Franklin, 64-62 on Sutton. Franklin had 172 unrealized air yards today. It's one of these things where, unfortunately, we've seen Bo Nix and him miss on so many deep balls. I'm inclined to chalk a lot of these up to prayer yards, more so the variety. But, man, Troy Franklin leading the Broncos in targets. I was behind the idea that he would have a nice year, Dwayne. I didn't see this coming.
Yeah, 195 air yards today, 19.5 average depth of target. And the other thing that you and I, and we talk about this, while we could call some of those prayer yards, there's still intent, right? And intent is the main thing we're trying to capture with a thing like air yards. And the other part of that is these shots down the field are these plays are such high, they have such high variance. that all of a sudden it can swing your way. Like it can be against you, against you, against you, against you. And then it's for you. And then it just looks really great. So yeah, Troy Franklin absolutely balling out. He had a 90%. He's not balling out. If he was balling out, he would have caught more of these today and, scored more fantasy points. But like the opportunity is there. 90% route participation. We did not have Marvin Mims Jr. today. So that was part of the equation here as well. But Troy Franklin, we've talked about him. He's been really the clear wide receiver 2 on this team since like week 3.
Full-time role for Pat Bryant with Marvin Mims out?
Nearly in the I was hoping he'd be more like 70-75% of the routes, but 62% today. So he was the third wide receiver, though, very clearly ahead of the rest of the guys. Did just enough to get over the prop bet that I put out, which was 17 yards. He got to 20. Just squeezed
Win
by.
is a win is a win. Love.
Hey, the Josh Jacobs one, man, I got by half a yard. So Pat Bryant was actually better than that. So.
Half a yard is plenty. Only other note would be Evan Ingram goose egged, although I did not get eyes on it, but I believe I saw Josh Norris tweet that he could have had a touchdown before the Cortland Sutton one, but Bo missed him on that one. So Ingram had been a little more consistent. Again, this was a really tough matchup. Not going to be as tough of a matchup for the Broncos on Thursday night. They're going to take on the Raiders. Over in Houston, Dwain, CJ Stroud unfortunately left early with a concussion. Get better soon. It was actually Davis Mills under center afterwards. And, wasn't pretty out there. We've seen Davis Mills, for quite some time, him and his big ass giraffe neck out there. So we'll see, if CJ is able to get healthy. They're going to be facing the Jaguars here next week on Sunday. So it has a full week. Again, sometimes they're able to get back. Sometimes it will be a week off. I don't think I would completely nuke Nico Collins in the ranks, Dwain, without CJ Stroud. I wouldn't be ranking him inside the top 10 or anything like that, but I think I'd probably still be starting with more lineups than not. That said, just based on what we saw, with Christian Kirk returning and then seemingly the disappearance of the Iowa State rookies, it's really Nico Collins and then everyone else in fantasy land, and we don't really want to deal with everyone else.
Yeah, Nico Collins, 14.5 PPR points today with a 28% target share, 92% route participation, which was nice to see because they kind of do the thing that the Dolphins do, where like they rotate these guys so much. Like Nico will have a lot of games, man, where he's at like 80-85% routes, and you're like, what are you guys doing? Like, why would you ever not want Nico Collins on the field? Like, this is absolute madness. You guys seen how bad your offense can be? But Christian Kirk, you mentioned, returned to the lineup, and that did send Jalen Noel to a 13% route participation, which was, I thought, kind of interesting. We knew there was a chance of it, and we had talked about it, but Noel's really played well, man. Like, and so to completely bury him like that, I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of it, but Christian Kirk, professional football player that gets paid money to catch passes, and he had a 21% target share today on a 70% route participation. One note I would say here. And you mentioned, the downturn for the rookies, but Xavier Hutchinson, and I did look up to see if he got hurt today, and he did not. Like, this was one of his lowest route participations of the season. Actually, I think it was his lowest. It dropped to 66%. And so Jaden Higgins was rotating in with him. So just nothing to overreact about now, guys, but potentially, do we see a takeover of Xavier Hutchinson's role as the wide receiver 2 by Jaden Higgins? That might be in the works.
I thought your one note was going to be a nice performance from a certain tight end who I've had.
No, I'm making you say that
over the years. Dalton Schultz caught
he had yak today, baby.
Targets, 77 yards, 47 of which came on a yak-filled catch. That must have been like more yak than he had the entire season combined. But all Drake and Josh around his side. Schultz looked good out there. He's looked better this year than he did last year for sure. Not quite gotten back to 2023 heights. He is the tight end 17 on the season. He's next to Zach Ertz and Jawan Johnson. I think that sounds about right for where you're getting there. So Again, no CJ Stroud going to be much tougher to trust. Otherwise, Dwayne, it would just be this backfield continues to seemingly be pretty well split between Woody Marks and Nick Chubb. But we also, you got to get Dario Gubawala. You got to get British Brooks over here, some goal line carries, Dwayne, the fullback who got stuffed at the 1 yard line, not once, but twice. So just a very annoying backfield. And it's just, we see Woody Marks emerge as the most explosive guy week after week. I know he wasn't killing it in this game, but, tough matchup against the Broncos. Just unfortunate. They're going to continue to be in our RB3 tier.
Dude, so I was watching that game, and British Brooks, I was watching him. I was like, man, this guy looks really short. And I know this is not right, but I just looked up British Brooks' height, and it says 5 foot flat.
What? No.
I know it's wrong, I'm telling you. But after
those
two carries,
it does.
It says 5 foot flat. Because I was, dude, I made 225 pounds, and it just says
ESPN says 5'11", but I kid you not, it says
it does
5
say
foot on
5
his
foot.
Wikipedia. That is hilarious.
Yeah. So anyway, he was shorter after those 2 stuffs because he got completely stuffed down. I was gonna make a funny joke, and then it got funnier when I saw he was 5 foot flat. Again, we know that's wrong, but yeah. So Chubb and Woody Marks, they were just sharing time, man. 47% of the snaps to Mark, 36% to Chubb. Basically split on the carries between the two, 44% for Chubb, 40% for Marks. I don't want to keep naming all these things. It's the same crap we've seen for like the last 3 to 4 weeks. More snaps typically for Marks, but Chubb's usually right there tied with him on the carries or above.
Only other note, this already really bad offensive line could get worse if their injuries to tackle Titus Howard and Ed Ingram, concussion and knee respectively, keep them out for any amount of time. Moving along to the late afternoon slate, we had the Jaguars beat the Raiders in a thriller, man. This is one of the best games of the day, 30-29 in overtime. The Raiders did cover as 2.5-point dogs, over cash to 44. The Raiders went for the win after scoring in overtime, and man, Geno had a wide open Tyler Lockett in the back of the end zone. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on who you're rooting for, Jaguars got a hand on it and went ahead and got that W. So wound up being really just a ton of the Jaguars controlling the ball. Dwain, they had nearly 43 minutes time possession, under 27 minutes for the Raiders. So during all that time holding the football, they also had the privilege of unfortunately injuring half their wide receiver room. Obviously, Travis Hunter got sent to IR during practice last week. That was a horrible thing we all had to deal with during the end of the week. Diami Brown got concussed during this game, and even Brian Thomas Jr., man, after a truly sweet catch and run, one of his probably better plays of the year, also suffered an ankle injury. I know I saw Dr. Jeff Mueller wondering if it could be of the high ankle sprain variety after it happened. So very, very unfortunate stuff. Hopefully not serious for BTJ. Hopefully Diami's back. Hopefully Travis Hunter is going to be back in 3 short weeks. We did hear that it's not seemingly, anything to do with his ACL or considered a long-term issue, but it does seem like in the meantime, Dwain, Parker Washington is the next man up. And I will say, I haven't checked it recently, but through the first 5 or 6 weeks, man, some of his, underlying per route numbers really were up there.
Yeah. So right now for the season, 23% targets per route run. So that's right there in wide receiver 2 territory. 1.55 yards per route run, but I'm not even going to put all that on him because he has to play with that doofus T-Law, right? I mean, we've established that we don't like T-Law on the show. We've tried to like T-Law. It didn't work. We didn't. We tried again, and whatever. But yeah, for Washington today, 17 fantasy points, 92% route participation. And I went back and looked at the beginning of the game. Really did look like he was going to, be the guy anyway, as far as the primary player on the field with Brian Thomas Jr., with Diami Brown also playing. Now, Washington does get to kick inside to the slot, played from there 49% of the time. So, yeah, he's going to be a waiver wire guy because, dude, we've got the Chiefs. So you've got multiple receivers on bye. You're going to have the Cowboys on bye. So you're going to have Lamb and Pickens on bye. And then we've got the Bengals. So Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. So 3 of the best. I mean, honestly, could there be a tougher 3 teams out wide receivers? You've got 2 to 3 starting fantasy pass catchers on each one of those teams between the wide receivers and tight ends. So Parker Washington is going to be a name, man, that we're going to have to look at for this week. So if you guys are hurting, yeah, this is going to, I guess the challenge with Parker Washington, I'll ask you this, Ian. So these underlying data points really are good. He hasn't been this before, but he's still a young player. I think this is his 3rd year. It might be his 4th. I do believe this is his 3rd season. So it's not like something where I think he's suddenly like a wide receiver 2 the rest of the way, but he could definitely be a wide receiver 2 next week. And he might be a wide receiver 3 until we get Travis Hunter back. And if either one of these other guys were to miss time, he might be a wide receiver 2 for a couple of weeks.
Hey, as everyone here knows, the quickest way to my heart is to put up big numbers against the Buckeyes. He had 2 100-yard games against them back in the day. But in all seriousness, man, this dude has been one of those guys where he's flashed with his limited opportunities. He's had some punt return touchdowns, at least one earlier this year. And just he wins downfield. He can win short, man. So, no, I don't think he's going to be incredible or anything. But who else are you going to throw the ball to right now? And honestly, it's one of these situations where Parker was outperforming both Travis Hunter and Brian Thomas Jr. during the first 6 months of the year. When you actually start looking at one of the things I like to look at, Dwayne, it's not the best stat, in the world or anything, but just passer rating when targeted and trying to get, a feel for who actually is finding success when they're getting targeted by a quarterback. And I'm, trying to pull it up right now. I'm pretty sure Washington, one of the highest guys, when targeted from Trevor Lawrence. So it is just something where I could see it. Yeah. What's he freaking at? He's dropped a little bit, so screw that argument. But at the end of the day, Dwayne, only one football to go around. And guess what? Not many more wide receivers to eat into those opportunities. So they are going to be facing, as we mentioned at the end of last game, the Texans. So it's hardly a layup matchup. But I can see Washington being a comfortable wide receiver 3 in a week, as you mentioned, where you might not have better options.
Yeah, he might. Yeah, with all the guys we have out, he might be a borderline wide receiver 2. We'll see where he shakes out. Who'd you say he's playing next week? I haven't looked ahead at the schedule
Texans.
yet. Yeah.
That's the problem.
That's actually one of the outlier defenses we really care about. You guys hear me say a lot of times, we don't care about defenses, but no, I also say we do care about the outlier edges, and the Texans, as much as, Ian roasts Derek Stingley more than he gets roasted. But I will say that he's part of a defense that's playing really well. And so, yeah, it'll be tough to get him above wide receiver 3 territory next week in that matchup, especially if there's any chance that I guess Stingley doesn't always travel, but anyway, and he
does,
he could get the one play.
And that would be where I give him credit, because some guys Sauce Gardner has started to travel more in recent years, which, hey, kudos to him.
I just think a lot of Washington's, will he travel to the slot was my question, because a lot of Washington's work's coming from the slot. Yeah.
Pretty much no one does. So, yeah, We'll see what happens there. Otherwise, Hunter Long, I think I just looked up, Dwayne. It seems like Brenton Strange is still a week away from being back.
50%
return date.
Okay, move on.
So
let's talk about.
He got a little banged up, but let's talk about these running backs real quick, though. Cam Little, Dwayne, NFL record, 68-yard field goal. How about that, Brandon Aubrey? Now,
did you guys pop champagne in your house?
I still got some in my eye, honestly. But good to see, man. You know how many freaking teams we had this dude on after he hit that 70-yarder in the preseason, and then he wasn't doing anything after. So we appreciate you finally getting back on Cam Little. But let's get to it, Dwayne. Let's get to the post-bye breakout for Bashaw Tootin. What do you see?
You've been waiting the whole show for this. He had the same role he had as before the bye. 60% of the snaps to ETN, 58% of the rushing attempts to ETN, 70% of the snaps inside the 5. This is a development. He has not had those. And you're was there 2? No, he had 7 snaps inside the 5. ETN. Horrible. 55% route participation, 30% of the 2-minute offense. So 16.5 fantasy points today from Travis Etienne. I never said Trevor. Tootin, 9.6 PPR points. He did score a touchdown, so that helped you out. But only 22% of the snaps, man. 24% of the rushing attempts. So his role did not change at all, and it was still LaQuint Allen as the 2-minute offense back.
Tootin is a great handcuff. I am sure he would do awesome things if ETN misses any time. I've just always pushed back on the idea that ETN was playing bad and or deserved to lose his job to Bashaw Tootin. I will say, though, Dwayne, that goal line roll, it could evaporate. 5 times was Travis Etienne tackled at the 1-yard line today on 3 separate drives, man. I looked at it, man. Looking at the 5 times, that is the highest mark since freaking, I think it was 2017 or something ridiculous. This just doesn't happen. So, yeah, it only could have been 3 touchdowns out there, but just wildly inefficient stuff from Etienne around the goal line, which is wild because he was running so hard out there today. Week high 11 missed tackles forced. He had 84 rushing yards. 88 of them came after contact. This really was the best Etienne has looked since the first couple weeks of the season. So unfortunate, it could have been a bigger day. But again, based on that usage Dwayne just broke down, hopefully more of those are going to be ahead. Meanwhile, over for the Raiders, this was an encouraging performance, Dwayne, because the last time out was, some of the worst football I think we've ever seen from this Raiders offense. And we wound up seeing Geno Smith throw 4 touchdowns. And it turns out having that Brock Bowers guy back maybe can fix a passing game. He caught 3 of them, honestly got tackled at the 1-yard line on another one. That's right. Bowers could have had 4 touchdowns today. So just incredible stuff. You were saying before the show, man, the tight end won the rest of the way. And I don't think it's particularly close.
No, it's not. Do you know how many fantasy points he scored today, Ian?
Dude, 40 plus?
43.3. Zoe had him on her bench because she plays in a 6-team league, and she has Tyler Warren. Well, she has Tyler Warren, I bet you had Tyler Warren ranked ahead of Brock Bowers this week.
I did.
I
Sorry,
did
Zoe.
because we're stupid. Yeah, and so she can blame me and you. We won't even make her take the L on that one.
Assuming Bowers had a full-time role. If he didn't, who cares? But that was the
concern. No, he did. 81% route participation, 34% target share, 75 air yards, 5.8 ADOT. Geno Smith in his 2 games. I know, guys, small sample. 2 games for Geno with Brock Bowers, 326 passing yards and 284, 17.5 and 26.3 fantasy points in his 2 games with Brock Bowers. So some of you, maybe you had to lean on Joe Flacco. Maybe some of you have Dak Prescott in your starting role. Who are the Raiders playing next week? Ian, tell me it's some matchup that I don't have to take all this back.
Yeah, you do. They're in Mile High Thursday Night Football.
So just kidding, guys. Not for next week. But, I'll say this. Like, the Broncos.
This was after that, though, Dwayne. The Cowboys.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Bowers,
and here's the thing. The Broncos, without Patrick Surtain, played well today. But, man, they were playing the Texans, who's really struggling. We had Davis Mills out there. When you don't have Patrick Surtain, it changes the whole defense because what do they do? Surtain takes one player away, and sometimes it's not even the number one, and then they'll double the number one. So when you take the ability to do that away, it changes your whole defense because the big thing about the shutdown corner isn't just that they shut down their player. It allows you to shift all of those resources to take away the remaining options on the team, and they don't have that right now. So it depends on your league. If you're playing in a really deep gross league, I don't think I would be completely scared of Geno. There probably will be a better option. But to Ian's point, after that, you get the Cowboys. So could get a spot start there in your fantasy lineup.
And I do know, I'll make sure I kind of break it down in my, Week 10 rankings article. But when you are kind of looking ahead for those bye weeks, guys, I do like to try to be a week ahead. So Geno really would be a great streamer for Week 11. It's the Colts and the Saints. So, hey, Daniel Jones managers, could have worse options than Geno. Jacoby Myers caught 4 or 6 targets for 23 yards. We'll see if he's still going to be employed by the Raiders. Certainly is Brock Bowers' passing game in the meantime, though. Also, Dwayne, it's Ashton Gentry's backfield. How about that, man? I believe 90% snaps. We got the first rounder of freaking full-time role finally. How about this?
Yeah, I mean, well, we've been talking about it now for multiple weeks, but yeah, this was a huge role, 90%. Yeah. But he's been around that 80% mark, came with 19.9 fantasy points today, had a 13% target share on 72% route participation. Obviously, the rushing attempts were there, 77% of them. Genty still wasn't super efficient today. The Raiders definitely have offensive line woes like that. They're going to need to address that this coming offseason. But yes, the volume, which is the thing we care about the most for Genty, is there. Still a player, man. I think I would be trying. I would still be trying to trade for Ashton Genty. I just think there's too much volume here. Like, it's going to be really tough for him to fail. We might not get like the upside ceiling, kind of season that we had hoped for, Ian. Like, he's probably not going to be a top 3 running back. But also, I'll tell you, if you're getting this much work, you can't rule it out. Like, the guy could get on a heater and it could still happen. But I think he's still firmly in that low end running back 1 with upside territory.
I'm not saying the Raiders are going to be anything close to a good football team by the time the season's said and done, Dwayne, but I don't know. I could see them finishing 4-13 of the spicy variety. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. They win a game they shouldn't have, down the stretch and everything. And just as much as this year hasn't been incredible for Genty, guys, he's still sitting there. RB 16, PPR points per game, 14.5, man. And just every time he touches the football, you still do see that explosiveness. Like, every single thing that made him lauded as this generational player. Had a nice 15-yard touchdown today where he broke a tackle and then again got that done. So could be another nice potential buy low candidate to your point, Dwayne. Yep. Buy low-ish.
Yep. Buy low-ish. Yep. Well, I'll probably cover him in utilization report this week. We'll see. I don't know. I've covered him like 3 times. So I'll take a look at what else is out there.
Let's move on to the Rams beating down the Saints 34-10. Rams covered as 14.5 point faves. The under cash here at 44.5, just by a hair. Crazy stat alert, everyone. The Saints had 16 minutes and 7 seconds time of possession. That is the lowest time since the 2011 John Skelton-led Arizona Cardinals. So Tyler Shuck and company literally just weren't really on the field. So shout out to Stafford, Sean McVay, Kyron Williams, Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams for hogging that football and really doing whatever they wanted out there. Another 4 touchdowns for Matthew Stafford. He now has 9 across his last 2 games, 16 touchdowns, 0 INTs over his last 5 games. I mean, Dwayne, I know Mahomes coming into this week was the MVP front runner. Maybe Josh Allen is going to be up there now, but Matthew Stafford, Sam Darnold, man, one of these NFC West quarterbacks, if we really do see them make a run, man, I could see that
Yeah.
too.
6-2, man. And like you've got the scheme that we love. He's obviously feeling it. The addition of Devontae Adams, man, like we can't overstate how valuable this man has been. Nakua was always going to do his thing, but switching out Adams for Cooper Kupp looks like just probably one of the best moves of the offseason, just because of what he unlocks for them once they get to the red zone and the green zone. 23 fantasy points today for Devontae Adams. And you mentioned, what Stafford's been doing for the season, man. He's averaging 20.2 fantasy points per game, 268 passing yards per game with 2.6 passing touchdowns per game. He's thrown for 2+ passing touchdowns in 6 of his 8 starts. So yeah, Stafford still just sitting there. He's in that low end QB1 guys, but man, any week he can jump up and give you a really high end QB1 performance. 26.8 fantasy points today.
I mean, they're at a banged up 49ers team next week. I don't see why Stafford won't be inside of our top 12 in a firm recommended start. So you mentioned Devontae Adams caught 2 more touchdowns today, both of the short variety. He now has an NFL high 16 end zone targets. George Pickens has 14. Nobody else is even double digits, guys. So again, once they get down to the goal line, it really has become Devontae Adams' show, much to the chagrin of Kyron Williams fantasy managers. That said, he did still find his way into the end zone in this one, had a $114 on the ground, forced 8 missed tackles as well, second most on the week. But hey, shout out to Blake Corum, 7 missed tackles in his own right, at 58 rushing yards out there. Again, not quite enough faith, in Corum as a weekly flex option, but make no mistake about it, he would be an instant contender for RB1 status. God forbid anything happened to Kyron. Only unfortunate really news item to report, Dwayne, is Puka Nacua suffered a chest or rib injury. That said, Sean McVay said afterwards, I think he's going to be good. He got his ribs. He could have come back in the game, but we kind of had a command. Felt like it was the smart thing. So seems like it's okay. He came back out on the sideline like in full uniform. I feel like if there was a problem with the x-rays or whatever, then he would have already, shedded the pads and all that. Of course, I am not a doctor, but even in a half game, 95 yards and a touchdown, it is
22.8. Yeah, 22.8 PPR points and with 65% of the routes.
I just wish they'd almost save him from himself a little bit. He got hurt on a rush attempt, man. And I know he's a beast at everything, okay? I know he can block great. I know he can run the ball great, but guess what? He's also maybe the best receiver in the NFL. Let's focus on that when we're freaking beating the crap out of the Saints.
He's kind of like, he's almost like on that Debo plane. Of what the way Debo used to be. Like every time you see him touch the ball, you're like, oh my God, this guy's amazing. But to your point, take a lot of hard hits with the guys. A lot of his receptions are essentially rushes as well. This guy takes a lot of big hits, from bigger defenders on the field because of where he operates. But, absolute beast. Let's hope that he's healthy.
I think that about does it on the Rams.
It was Whittington as the wide receiver 3. You guys have heard us say it before, but he was the guy that really came in and replaced Nacua in the game.
No Tutu for a bit. No Tutu here for a bit as well as he is on IR. So still a bunch of madness going on in the tight end room, Dwayne.
Can we combine them all together? 10.3, 7.4, 6.7, and 3 PPR points. Like if we could put that all together, we would have a really good tight end, Ian, but we don't, and we don't know which one. It is Tyler Higbee leading the committee with a 50% route participation. Listen to their targets per route run. 24% for Higbee, 30% for Ferguson, 40% for Allen, and then Parkinson had a 25% targets per route run. It didn't matter which one was out there. They were getting targeted. But yeah, we have a 4-way rotation right now. And the Rams, man, they are also another team that's really leaning into this multiple tight end stuff right now.
Allen also even had a 14-yard touchdown nullified on a face mask penalty, so could have even been bigger. Unfortunately, no team tight end fantasy options as far as I know. But honestly, as soon as I said that idea out loud, I do not hate that. Over with the Saints, first career touchdown pass for Tyler Shuck to his former Oregon teammate, Jawan Johnson, a.k.a. Jawan Jesus, from 11 yards out. Good to see Jawan go out there, make a couple catches, and do his thing. Of course, he was behind Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed in terms of overall yards and opportunities and all that jazz. Team high 9 targets for Rashid Shaheed. I will say, Shuck, you see him with a clean pocket. Like this dude's got a big enough arm to really put the football where he wants. Hit a nice deep out to Shaheed, Olave downfield. But again, just a situation, man, where the offense was barely ever out on the field. They couldn't run the ball. So what were you going to get? 10 points at the end of the day. So Alvin Kamara lost a fumble out there. Honestly, Dwayne, it seems very likely one of these receivers is going to be traded. So I don't want to put, too much stock in anything we saw here because it's all going to change in the next day or so. I'm just wondering, though, it did seem like just from watching the game or having it on the, try box, if you will, because for some reason the NFL still doesn't consistently give us 4 late afternoon games, a lot more Taysom Hill than maybe we saw over the past few weeks.
23% of the snaps, 29% of the rushing attempts, which was 4. They didn't, you just mentioned how few plays they got to run. Didn't get to run the ball very much today. Obviously, in the trailing script, it was 25 pass plays and 14 rush plays for the team. On Shuck, man, I put out the under bet on Olave. It also hit by 1 yard. So many barely.
Like we're fired today.
Yeah, but I was honestly impressed by Shuck in the second half, just watching him play and what you mentioned, pushing the ball vertically down the field, even more so than what we had seen from Spencer Rattler. So I think, there's potentially a silver lining here. Obviously, dude took a massive sack too, where he got ear-holed, ended up being a penalty. I think it was on Young, for the Rams. He took some really big hits, held onto the ball too long some plays. But he's willing to stand in there, man. He's willing to push it down the field, and that's good for Shaheed and Olave. Like you said, we'll see what happens with either one of these guys. We downgraded them both last week. I don't know that I don't think I'm going to downgrade them again, because overall I walked away from the game saying, okay, they're a bad team, but their time of possession is not going to be that bad every game. And he pushed it down the field, which I think is all we can ask for. So I felt pretty good about Shuck in the second half, so I'll just leave it at that.
And again, it's one of those things where even if there is a decreased efficiency for Olave, which I don't think is a guarantee necessarily, if he gets traded, all of a sudden we're looking at 3 or 4 more targets per game, and that could make up for it. So again, more on the way there. Saints certainly have a winnable enough, or at least a matchup they can put up points against the Panthers here next week. Moving on to the game of the week, or at least it was supposed to be. Still a really good game, but no Bears-Bengals out here, Dwain. Anyway, the Bills took down the Chiefs 28-21. Josh Allen now 5-1 against the Chiefs in the regular season. Who cares what happens in January? Bills won outright as 2.5-point dogs under cashier at 52.5. So just a very efficient game from the Bills. Only needed Josh Allen to throw the ball 26 times, but when you complete 23 of them for an average 10.5 yards per attempt, man, things turn out just fine. Khalil Shakir caught 7 of 8 targets for 43 yards, again, continuing to eat with screens. Really the breakout performance, if you will, was from Dalton Kincaid, 101 yards and a touchdown, caught all 6 of his targets. Looking big and fast out there, Dwayne, but unfortunately, again, it's a run-first offense, and I'm sure that Dawson Knox and Jackson Halls continue to prevent Kincaid from really just reaching the full route rate he needed. And honestly, at this point, man, it's just so clear that Kincaid is the best option in this passing game. Why not give the guy a full-time role?
Yeah, they're not going to, apparently, but it doesn't really matter, because now we've just seen it, over so many weeks. This is the one exception, I think, just because when he's out there, he's getting the targets. He had a 24% target share today, despite only running a route 53% of the time that Josh Allen dropped back to pass. We would definitely like that number to be higher. I don't know how you can't get it to 70%, and just get it to that range. But continues to come through with the big plays, getting targeted further down the field, running with the ball after the catch. He's a big part of their red zone and green zone offense. So Kincaid, man, 22.1 PPR points today. So low end tight end 1 with weekly high end tight end 1 upside. I think the routes keep us from actually being able to say, fine, if he had the routes, he'd probably be it's a really good year for tight ends, but he'd be probably in our top 5, man. If he had the routes, maybe even higher. But because he doesn't, he's that low end tight end 1, but obviously big upside in any given week.
Guys, 135 players have at least 25 targets this year. Number 1 in passer rating when targeted, Dalton Kincaid, 158.1. That is very, very close to a perfect one. Really is having a fantastic third-year breakout. Again, and the counting numbers honestly aren't too far behind. Just been more of a run-first offense. James Cook, another 114 yards. They get vultured not once but twice by Josh Allen on separate drives where he got down the 1-yard line, and then Josh scored. But that's just life. And
Ty Johnson got one too, because he happened to be in there when they ran the hurry up. I was like,
do you think we're almost looking at a Bengals situation, Dwayne? What is I know my confidence level in Ray Davis being the clear-cut handcuff isn't quite as high as it was back in week 1.
No, it's not. He had 5% of the snaps today, and this has happened to him like 3 games this year where he just completely disappeared. So I think we'd be looking at more of a split between the two. My gut does say that Davis would get more of the rushing attempts, but Ty Johnson would get some of them, and he's going to get probably all the passing down work. So yeah, a bit of a challenge, but there's a chance Ray Davis basically steps into most of James Cook's role, which hasn't been anything in the receiving game. It's just been, on the ground. 13 and a half PPR points today for Cook, 75% of the snaps, 82% of the rushing attempts, but only a 4% target share.
On to the Kansas City Chiefs. They do have a bye coming up, so we don't need to dive too far into their upcoming, projections and all that. But Mahomes just 15 of 34 passing. He took 3 sacks. He was under pressure on 50% of his dropbacks. That really is the only way we've seen teams slow down Mahomes over the course of 4 quarters over the years, get a lot of pressure without needing to devote too many resources to the line of scrimmage. I would say that kind of strategy works against pretty much any quarterback as well for what it's worth. But still managed to hit some big plays. Actually found Hollywood Brown downfield twice. Tried to get things going with Xavier Worthy. Unfortunately, really couldn't. Another disappointing day there. Of course, Rashid Rice continued to do Rashid Rice things. Surprised to only see 4 catches. I just thought with the way they love using him on screens and these just easy designs, like he would always have 7 or 8, but only 4 catches for 80 yards. Luckily, though, Andy Reid is a maniac around the goal line. They have liked to use Rashid Rice as a rusher, so he skewed in for his 2nd score on the ground this season. So loving Rashid Rice, but Xavier Worthy, Dwain, 106 unrealized air yards. Like they're trying to hit this dude downfield, but I'll say it, man, for someone who is the fastest man alive, apparently, like I would love to see a little more downfield separation out of this dude from time to time.
Yeah, I'm with you. 24% target share, 126 air yards today, but only 6 fantasy points. 87% route participation. That's the highest on the team behind Kelsey, who's at 95%. So the playing time is there. You're getting the shots down the field. I would say with Patrick Mahomes, eventually this stuff's going to come through, but there's a reason we've had to downgrade Worthy to that wide receiver 3 territory. He's really more of a boom bust play. I mean, he's still getting more work than guys like JMO, right? JMO's in the same bucket, but doesn't get as many targets. So I still feel like Worthy's going to end up clicking, and we could get a little hot streak where we're pretty excited about him. But yeah, more of a boom bust play just by the nature of the way that what you just said, not being able to get the separation down the field. And really, like that last one where a big chunk of his air yards came from, like that was a prayer. That was definitely a prayer. Like Mahomes just chunked it up there into basic double coverage, and Worthy was well covered.
I just wish they could give him 20% of Rashid Rice's kind of shorter design stuff. I mean, he had that play last week where he reversed field, and it was just like, oh my God, like, yeah, this is what this guy can do with the football in his hands. So we'll see what happens. Maybe they can work things out a bit more over their bye. Travis Kelce, 66 yards. He took one hell of a shot to the ribs before halftime. He did return to play, but good on him for having the week off. Really, I guess the big news, if you can call it that, Dwayne, will be the backfield. I will start off by saying that, we got a pregame report saying that Isaiah Pacheco is expected to be ready to return following the team's week 10 bye, but for what it's worth, certainly was the Kareem Hunt show in the meantime.
Yeah, 12.5 PPR points today for Kareem Hunt, 81% of the snaps, 58% of the rushing attempts, 63% route participation, 100% of the 2-minute offense. He had a 7% target share. Brashard Smith gave you a big fat 0.7 PPR points in this game. And you just had Clyde Edwards-Helaire, didn't have a lot of playing time in, only 4%, but they had to give him 11% of the rushing attempts. Why? I don't know why. Like, you guys actually drafted Clyde Edwards-Helaire and saw that he stunk. You released him. He's a complete bust as a first-round pick, but they still had to give him just enough. So we were thinking I think I had Smith projected for like 30% of the rushing attempts. I definitely missed that because he only had 16%.
I don't want to hear people complaining about Brashard Smith lack of usage. You cannot complain about a running back's lack of rush attempts when they cannot even average 3 yards per carry, and that's all I'm going to say about that. So pregame report said Hunt and Smith would split carries. That was a lie. We'll see what happens in the future.
How many of those pregame workload things bust?
None. They all bust. Yeah, exactly.
I feel like 90%. The Dowdle one was correct this week, but that
was not a report. That was Dave Canales actually being a gangster and telling us.
Well, no, I know, but I think it was Josina Anderson, I think, came out like with that report later in the week, Friday or Saturday, I believe. So,
Mhm.
but either way, main point being these workload predictions are like they rarely hit. It did move the needle in the pregame because whenever I put a bet out there on Smith, it was at 13.5 rushing yards and it jumped to 21.5 after that report hit.
Ooh, Mr. Dwain moving lines out here in
No, I did
continental
not move lines.
America.
That
Dwayne,
report moved the lines.
Dwayne Rapsheet said the Chiefs are looking for another, quote, explosive RB ahead of the trade deadline. Meanwhile, Rich Cimini said the Jets won't trade Brees Hall, barring an offer they can't refuse. Little Godfather movement here coming from the Chiefs.
Man,
You with me?
yeah, yeah, dude. If Brees Hall landed on this team, I do believe he would take over the backfield like really quickly, and we would be very excited about it.
So I agree. A man can dream, but hey, for now, Chiefs going to have a bye. They're still sitting 5-4, certainly still continuing to look like they'll be able to clinch their freaking 10th straight AFC West Division title or something like that. But for now, shout out to the Bills on getting that much needed and big time dub. Guys, before we get to the Seahawks demolition of the Commanders, it's time for our DraftKings closing lines. I've teamed up with DraftKings Sportsbook to bring you the ultimate way to tip off this NBA season. Right now, new customers who bet just $5 will get $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins, plus 3 months of NBA League Pass on us. That's right, new customers bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins, plus 3 months of NBA League Pass on us. Just download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and sign up using the promo code FANTASYLIFE. The crown is yours. Stack your bonus bets on same-game parlays, player props, money line spreads, and more, or stay in the action with live betting that brings every play to life. So here's your play. Download DraftKings Sportsbook. Sign up at promo code FANTASYLIFE. Bet just $5 and get 3 months of League Pass on us and $300 if your bet wins, paid out in bonus bets. Thanks to DraftKings Sportsbook for sponsoring this. This makes this NBA season one to remember. On Sunday Night Football, the Seahawks beat down the Commanders 38-14 in a game that really wasn't even that close. It was 31-7 at halftime. Seattle obviously easily covered as 2.5-point faves. The overcast here at 47.5. So Sam Darnold joined 16 for 16, 282 yards and 4 touchdowns in the first half. He found Cody White for a 60-yard catch and run. He found Torrey Horton twice. Pretty nice routes, silky smooth around the goal line. Also, Elijah Arroyo caught a score. No touchdowns for Jackson Smith and Jigba, but man, caught 8 of 9 targets for 129 yards, continuing to look unguardable. And there was even a play, I think it was the second Horton touchdown. They all kind of were blended together, but you could just see JSN. They even showed the close-up replay afterwards. Like, he just put the cornerback on skates. It really does seem like they could drop back and just throw this dude the ball each and every time out, and he would probably find a way to come down with it. So amazing stuff from Darnold, who continues to put forward. Like we were saying with Stafford, man, a arguable MVP level season, and JSN, man, certainly should be on the short list for offensive player of the career. So just awesome stuff, Dwayne. Do you think there's enough volume on the table for any of these other pass catchers to become overly relevant? We also need to remember Cooper Kupp was out in this one due to a heel and hamstring injury.
I'll just say this, Cooper Kupp hasn't really looked that good this year, and I feel like Torrey Horton just is another more dynamic playmaker, so that would be one to just kind of keep an eye on. I don't know that. I don't think this means Torrey Horton's going to take over Cooper Kupp's role. They like him, like he does so many other things, but Kupp just doesn't give you this vertical prowess that you get out of Torrey Horton. And with the way that Sam Darnold is dealing the ball down the field, especially when he sees these one-on-one matchups and the anticipation and just absolute dimes, I feel like they might actually be a better, which they've already been great, but they might be an even better offense with Torrey Horton on the field more. Had a nice release on that play, and that was against press man coverage. Got a great get off and just immediately had the guy cooked, and Darnold saw it right away. I do believe the touchdown you were talking about where Jackson Smith and Jigba was wide open, I think it might have been one of the ones they threw to the tight end. So, mostly JSN here. They continue to use the 12 personnel a lot. So Arroyo as well as AJ Barner, they're getting on the field as well. Barner, it's interesting because tonight he had an 83% route participation rate. I bet that's his highest on the season. I would have to go back and check. Nice. It's not like he earns a ton of targets, but man, they score so many points. Barner, in a pinch, can help you as a fantasy tight end, but not a guy I would want to be starting every single week.
Just, again, tough to know if he's going to turn one of those 3 or 4 targets into a touchdown. But to his credit, and this offense's credit, they've managed to get that going. And, Dwayne, they use them as their tush-push quarterback today.
That got him there tonight.
Yeah, they had Jalen Milroe doing that for a second. He didn't. I think he made a bad fumble on an option, so they probably scrapped that. But I do wonder if at some point, in the near future, maybe a Tyler Warren, Mark Andrews has done it in Baltimore. Like one of these years, we are going to see a tight end. They might just outlaw the tush push before then. That probably will be what happens. It'll be a moot point. But if there ever was a tight end getting those 5 or 6 touchdowns, man, really could break things. Mention again him stealing that touchdown. Of course, Kenneth Walker got them down to the 1 yard line. They brought in Zach Charbonnet to be the back man there. Barner took it from him, but just unfortunate. It's wild, man, because could you just imagine how high we would be drafting Walker if we knew how good the Seahawks offense was at this point in the year? It's just, he's been great with his opportunities in large part, but Zach Charbonnet takes the touchdowns. And the one big thing, though, we have not seen nearly as much involvement in the passing game as we were maybe thinking relative to Kubiak and Kamara last year.
Yeah, 8.1 fantasy points tonight for Kenneth Walker, 5.6 for Charbonnet. The same kind of mess. It just, they're even or they kind of flip-flop, depending on the way these games work out and their snaps. It was Kenneth Walker tonight, 54% versus 38% for Charbonnet. So we'll see if that's something coming out of the bye where they do want to prioritize Walker. He did have that slight edge. I'm not willing to go out on a limb and say that that's the case. And then if we're going to have this tush push stuff with the tight end, it's like, come on, man. Like it's just too many mouths to feed it. But to your point, like if it did break to where one of these guys took over the backfield, it's an offense that we really like now. And so both of them have really big contingent upside. And we've seen them both produce whenever they've been, the guy getting 70% of the snaps. Like both of them have proven they can be running back ones in that scenario. But they just seem very intent on keeping both of them involved.
Seahawks will face off against the Cardinals next week in an NFC West clash. Over the Commanders, my God, Dwain, I was just scrolling trying to get an update on Jaden Daniels' injury and unfortunately had to watch the elbow injury. My God, man. Looks horrific. Left elbow out in the freaking arm brace, man. I would be shocked if he is not going to miss the rest of the season. Obviously, brutal break for the Commanders, for Jaden Daniels, for everyone involved. So just absolutely sucks, man. And it was a situation. We started recording. It happened after that, man. What? I don't even know what he was doing in the game still at that point.
Yeah. It was right when we started recording. But yeah, I saw the video. It looks bad. I agree with you. I'm not a doctor, but I'm not surprised if he misses the rest of the season just with the way that looked. So yeah, man, now you have Marcus Mariota most likely leading this passing attack the rest of the way. And while he's a guy that on his own, like we can like it in, spot starts in fantasy because he will scramble around, he'll do some things. Like we've seen Marcus Mariota long enough to know that this is bad for Terry McLaurin and this is bad for Deebo Samuel as far as like their ceiling cases for the rest of the season. So yeah, downgrade for everyone on the Commanders offense. Run the backfield, 44% of the rushing attempts tonight went to Chris Rodriguez. So that's his biggest workload that we've seen in some time. Now, I don't know if that was all just complete garbage time, Ian. I haven't been able to dig into it. But Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt only had 44% of the rushing attempts. So he tied with Rodriguez, only 5.1 fantasy points for Bill. It's been really brutal for Bill.
I know, man. This was a tough matchup, but he's had some good ones that he just still couldn't get anything going with. So just another 3.2 yards per carry here. Chris Rodriguez was making more out of his opportunities. Jerry McNichols, as a pass catcher, has been making the most out of his opportunities. Again, one of these situations where earlier in the year, yeah, it was much easier to build a case, but Bill was freaking leading the league in yards per carry. Right now, though, really is hard to overly bicker with Cliff Kingsbury's backfield rotation. So
I will say today he averaged 3.2 yards per carry. He averaged 3.4 after contact. So, I mean, you're getting hit behind, the line of scrimmage. So, yeah, but it is what it is at this point. Like Bill is just obviously an untrustable fantasy asset.
And again, now that we have the seemingly non-existent high-end scoring upside that we thought could be on the table here, going to be very tough to ever give him out of that RB3 range. I will say Mariota, given the fact that he does still run around as much as he does, maybe he could be that QB streamer we're looking for next week. I know I'll be ranking him higher than Geno Smith going to mile high, so we'll keep that in mind. But yes, it will be downgrades for Deebo Samuel. Maybe a returning Terry McLaurin, although I think I might have even saw a report where I doubt Terry's going to play, if it is, at all risky here. Could be out a little bit longer. We'll see what happens. Zach Ertz, decent game, but yeah, I think that's about it. You got anything else in the Commanders, Dwain?
No. And Debo honestly just hasn't looked good in the last 3 to 4 games, even though the targets have been there. Like I don't know if it's the heel thing or if he's got multiple things going on, but only 41 receiving yards tonight. The projection model had him as an under. I didn't have the guts to put it out there, as a bet today. But it nailed it as far as Debo in this particular matchup. So only 9.4 PPR points for Debo. So yeah, nothing else to add, just downgrades across the entire Commanders offense.
He also has 3 total rushing yards in the last 4 games. Like, if you would have told me,
they're not using him as much there. I really believe it. Part of it's due to the injury. He had a decent carry tonight. That was well blocked. He still got to the edge, and got down the field a little bit. But yeah, Debo's struggling.
Struggle bussin'. Well, with that, everyone, we're going to go ahead and wrap up this edition of the Fantasy Life Show. Again, Dwain's got his utilization report out on Monday. As always, make sure you check that out. And we'll be back on Tuesday to break that down. First, though, I'll have my Week 10 ranks out. Then I'll be back here sitting pretty with Kendall Valenzuela breaking down the Week 10 waiver wire. So get your guys' popcorn ready for that. Otherwise, just have a great rest of your Sunday, Monday, whenever you happen to be. It's definitely Monday at this point. Have a great rest of your Monday. So for Dwain, for producer Mick, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning into the Fantasy Life Show. And until next time, take care, everybody.